Isaac Jake Sullivan.
Because there's 1 million people there in very close quarters, you would have really significant civilian casualties. And while Israel would also be able to kill some Hamas folks, many Hamas folks would melt away because they're terrorists. They're not really organized fighters in the way that we think about a typical military.
Recapping the top story, experts in the construction industry are expected to visit the site of the building collapse in George in the Western Cape today. The death toll in the tragedy by last night was at 20. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, soccer action. Veli Motwa shining as Amazulu's key player, clinching a vital draw against Kaizer Chiefs in the DStv Premiership. Plus, Arsenal take the Premier League lead after Leandro Trossard scores the match's only goal against Manchester United. Stay tuned for all the details just before 6:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And on the traffic desk, trouble already on the Mabopani Highway coming into Pretoria, the R80 just under pressure around the XX. There's a backlog there as you come down towards the Roslyn Road, so we'll keep an eye on that. It's a busy route this time of morning. The Mike went into Joburg, just starting to backlog from Boysons through to Crown. Durban, watch for some overnight or overrunning overnight roadworks between Mgena Road and Spaghetti Junction. There may be some additional lane closures that still remain in place there. And Cape Town side today already out of Mitchell's Plains, Morgan Village area. The M7 Jake Scoville closed again this week through Westgate and Westridge area, and that just forces traffic up to the north on local routes, and then all sort of backlogs on Morgansteer as you head out to rejoin the M7. Also busy of AZ Berman heading up towards the R300 and the R300 down towards the M7. It's a busy start to a new week coming out of that Mitchell's Plain area. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 6, good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Now, as you know, I am a relatively young man, or at least that's how I see myself, right? You know, you may be in late middle age, but you're still approaching early middle age, is how I would see it. And over the weekend, I was away, as you might have known, on Thursday and Friday. Sorry about that. Good to be with you again, though. And I did miss you, you know. I'm doing stunts. I always say I really do. And anyway, so where I went with some friends and family, etc. And we went for a series of long walks. I'm not going to give any more details than that. And when I woke up this morning, I thought I was going to have to crawl to the bathroom because my legs and my arms, I don't know why my arms, but my legs are so stiff. I feel like an old man this morning. There's an older relative who tells me, don't let the old person in. You know, you've got to fight it. And I completely understand that. But could someone please tell me why, if you go for a series of long walks, your arms are stiff the next morning? How does that work? I mean, my legs stiff, sure, I expected that. But my arms, someone who's better at this sort of stuff, maybe you can tell me why that's happened. I was really very surprised at that. Anyway, so if you hear strange noises this morning, it's not just me reacting to the interviews or something. It's literally, I've moved my right leg in particular, and it's very sore, or my left little toe, which has a big blister on it. I know, that's exactly what you needed to know this morning, that my left little toe has a big blister on it, and that is actually pained against the chair or something. So anyway, just a health warning for this morning's show, because man, oh man, I am not feeling like a very young man this morning. How was your weekend? What have you been up to? I hope you were able to do some exercise and basically, you know, spend some time with family and all the rest. Unfortunately, I think the eyes of the nation still very much on the situation in George. 20 people now officially dead. You heard just a moment ago the police ministry explaining to Elvis what Becky Cele said yesterday, the police minister, that they really don't get a sense that the contractors are working properly with them. There's a developer, a contractor, and 6 subcontractors, and they're looking for more details about the people. And then, of course, over the weekend now, we know 42 people have survived, have been pulled out alive. We have 32 unaccounted for, I think it is. Might be 31 unaccounted for, actually. And 20 people are now officially dead. And one person, I mean, wow, Gabriel Guambe, pulled alive after 118 hours underneath the rubble. Can you imagine? And I know people have said to me, this must scar you for the rest of your life, and I think it must, and you think of the families there. And so we're waiting to see what happens, and there's a lot of conversation around, the information about the people working on the site. And I was thinking, you may be in the construction sector, but when the construction mafia arrive and say you must employ these people, do you have their details? How does all of that work? We know the construction mafia, so we'll still use that phrase in inverted commas, are kind of, in many, many places. So then how does that work if you've had to employ people you don't even know and they give you the details and they take the money? You kind of know what's happening here. So very difficult. And there are other stories that are coming out of it. The newspaper's reporting over the weekend of a woman who says that, her brother said that she had been employed as a cleaner but was mixing cement. And I've mixed a little bit of cement in my time, not a lot, but it is something that, you want someone to check on. Certainly, I hope someone checked the cement that I mixed. I think they did. But still, there are going to be many questions that come out of this, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of inquiry. But I think more than that, we kind of need to have a look at the construction sector in a much kind of longer term way. And if you look at the problems of the construction sector, largely because of the construction mafia, it's very, very difficult. Lots of other issues happening over the weekend. Former President Thabo Mbeki, he was in KwaZulu-Natal. The DA also had a big rally in KwaZulu-Natal over the weekend. But former President Mbeki seemed to be kind of quite warmly welcomed, which was not the case, sort of towards the end of his presidency. If you remember, as then former President, now former President Zuma was sort of gaining the ascendancy. But former President Mbeki saying there should be a national dialogue after the elections. And he said, no political party or no single political party has all of the answers. Well, look, he's probably right there. But he says that basically we need to hear from people. And I've been thinking a bit about this. I don't know if a national dialogue helps us or not. And I think there's quite an interesting conversation to have around that. I'd like to know from you if you think we need that. And I think also, so for example, who gets to come? And when people talk about Gaza and the transition to democracy and all of the rest, well, during that period, that was a sort of political transition. And maybe the problem we're having is an economic transition. But I think that, it was easy to know who was going to be involved. You knew it had to be the government at the time, the apartheid government. You knew it had to be the ANC and the IFP and other bodies. But, who would it be political parties this time? Who would represent, for example, the 10 million people who don't work? That for me, I think, would be the key constituency, really. So, there's a lot to sort of look at that over the weekend. President Cyril Ramaphosa saying over the weekend that ZANU-PF would not be playing an active role in the ANC's election campaign. They'll be there as sort of observers. The African Transformation Movement, they're very frustrated at that. Egypt over the weekend, this was last night, actually, so this is sort of fairly new, saying it'll join South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice. Basically, our application to have what Israel is doing in Gaza declared a genocide. This means Turkey and Colombia now join us in that application. I've seen some analysis that morning that suggests that this is really important because Egypt has always sort of supported or been a sort of diplomatic ally, if I can put it like that, of Israel in the region. And of course, they're on the other side of Gaza. You've got sort of, Israel, Gaza, the Rafah border post where the Rafah city is, and then you've got Egypt. And so this is very important. I think this is quite important. And then over the weekend as well, our government announcing we're asking for more provisional measures to protect civilians and to protect Palestinians in Gaza. So very important conversations and developments happening over there. And then Eskom just denying again that it's overusing or using too much money on the open cycle gas turbines to keep the lights on. It says in April this year it spent over 1.1 billion rand. In April last year it spent 3.1 billion rand. So it's making, that's a big difference is basically the point that it's making. Good to hear from you this morning. I will be the person in the corner wondering why I decided to go and do what I did over the weekend. And I'm fine sitting down, but the moment I stand up, man, oh man. You know the number, 086 000 2032, your SMS 41391, you tweet SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. You with SFM. It's just gone 14 minutes after 6. Good morning.
Catch the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday at 7 on SABC2. This week, it's all about mastering the mighty Swiss roll. To make things even more challenging, contestants must work together and present both a savoury and sweet offering of this classic bake. Who will roll on to the next round of the competition? Find out on the Tastemaster SA. Tuesday evenings at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
My name is Njabulo Nzuza, the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs. During the successful voter registration weekend drives, we invited you, our valued clients, to come and collect your IDs. Thank you to the more than 65,000 citizens who came to our offices. We once again invite you to visit us during our extended office hours on Saturdays in May 2024 to come and collect your ID.
Location, London. Unit, the London Serious Crime Unit. The Steering, Luther, a dedicated policeman, an inspired maker of connections, and a whirlwind genius. Dazzling, obsessive, and sometimes dangerous in the violence of his fixations. The Challenge. Every episode will see Luther facing a succession of psychological duels between a hunter and the hunted, a predator and the prey. Tune in to Luther, Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 1st of May. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Stephen. I should not be asking how you're doing.
Oh,
right?
man, oh, man. I'm a young man, but here I am, feeling like an old man sitting in the corner.
It happens. It happens.
Maybe I'll get younger as the day goes on. That would be
knows?
nice. Yes.
Yeah.
What's coming up today?
Well, we are still focusing on the situation on the George building collapse, where the search and rescue efforts are continuing. The Police Minister, Bheki Cele, is saying that investigations are underway to determine the cause of the collapse, and experts in the construction industry as well as the Public Works and Infrastructure Minister will be visiting the site today, and they will be looking at the role of the professionals who were involved with this project and if there was compliance with all building regulations. We have reaction from the MK party on the fallout between its leader, former President Jacob Zuma, and the founder Jabulani Khumalo, because in April, Khumalo, in a letter written to the IEC, indicated that he was stepping down as the leader of the party. He was then expelled after a fallout with Zuma. So despite this, Khumalo, however, maintains that he remains the founder and the leader of the MK party.
Oh, there's going to be another legal case here. Watch.
And then we also have some comments from Zuma maintaining that he still remains a member of the ANC, although he will be voting for the MK party. Quite interesting.
Yeah, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, we also have campaigning from various political parties over the weekend and their plans for the week ahead. In court today, the Senzo murder trial expected to resume, and it comes after almost 2 weeks that the trial was postponed after the defense accused the state of engaging in a trial by ambush, and the state had introduced new evidence as court proceedings were due to get underway, and the evidence there related to cell phone communication between all the accused dating back to 2018. In the Western Cape, the 4 accused are expected to appear in the Friedman Magistrates court today. That's in connection with the disappearance of 6-year-old Jocelyn Smith, and 4 people arrested there, including her mother, as well as her mother's boyfriend, Jacqueline Apollos. And then 11 suspects arrested over the weekend during a shootout with police in Pretoria. They expected to appear in the Shoshanguve Magistrates Court, and their arrest came after police crime intelligence received a tip-off about a man who was about to be robbed after he responded to a Facebook advert of a truck that was on sale. So it is alleged that the suspects are responsible for robberies related to online shopping. And just lastly, we're also monitoring the situation as people still continue to flock to the Palane home in Shoshanguve following the fatal shooting of 5-year-old Junior Palane, highlighting, the rampant crime in that area.
Yeah, awful, isn't it? And Musa, thank you. We'll be listening on the radio 18 minutes after 6.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, cloudy, becoming partly cloudy. Isolated showers, thunder showers by the late afternoon, 14 and 25. Johannesburg, cloudy, becoming partly cloudy. Isolated afternoon showers and thunder showers, 12 and 24. Vereeniging, cloudy, becoming partly cloudy. Isolated afternoon showers and thunder showers, 14 and 25. Mbombela, morning fog, otherwise cloudy. Drizzle at times, 15 and 23. Polokwane, cloudy, becoming partly cloudy by the afternoon, 9 and 22. Mahikeng, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thunder showers 11 and 26. Vryburg, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thunder showers 10 and 27. Mangaung, partly cloudy, 6 and 25. Kimberley, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thunder showers 10 and 27. Uppington, partly cloudy, 16 and 31. Cape Town, fine, a fresh to strong southeasterly wind, 14 and 25. George, fine, a light and variable wind, 9 and 21. Gqeberha, cloudy, morning drizzle, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, a moderate northeasterly wind, 13 and 22. East London, cloudy, light rain, a moderate northeasterly wind, 13 and 22. eThekwini, cloudy, scattered showers and rain, a moderate to fresh northeasterly, 17 and 23. Richards Bay, cloudy, scattered showers and rain, a moderate to fresh northeasterly, 18 and 24. And Pietermaritzburg, morning fog, otherwise cloudy, isolated showers and rain, 13 and 20.
Hey, you know what, South Africa? We're just not talking about enough.
Excuse me?
Use it liberally. Use it early. Use it with your folks.
Hey, careful, young lady.
Yes, it'll be awkward at first, but not quite as awkward as your tidy-whitey wearing father-in-law spending his golden years on your couch. Wouldn't you agree? Finances is not a dirty word. Let's start talking about it, Mzansi. Find out how at livewithconfidence.co.za. Sanlam. Sanlam Life is a licensed life insurer, financial services, and registered credit provider.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
22 minutes after 6, good morning. Overnight, Egypt has said it will join South Africa's application at the International Court of Justice at The Hague, asking judges to have Israel's actions in Gaza declared a genocide. That's after our government asked judges over the weekend to impose further provisional measures against Israel and formally told the court that, in South Africa's view, Israel had not adhered to the measures previously ordered by the court. This means, as I understand it, our case is now backed by Egypt, Turkey and Colombia. Meanwhile, the death toll in Gaza now stands at over 35,000 people killed by the Israeli offensive. Israel is still telling people to leave Rafah. Tembisa Fakura is an international relations analyst and senior researcher and director at Africa-Asia Dialogues. Tembisa, good morning. Thanks very much indeed for your time.
Thanks for having me.
As I understand it, Egypt has been an important diplomatic ally of Israel for a long time. Now it's backing our court case. How significant is this decision?
Well, it's significant, and it also means that there's trouble in the negotiation table, because this is a country that's committed to negotiating, and at the same time, while it's doing that, and the entire world is waiting for good news coming from Cairo, now they're coming up with its statement. That means that there's something really, really amiss going on at the moment within the negotiating table. So that's the first point. But the second point, of course, is that it's a step too late. Egypt was expected to have taken this step much, much more earlier. And it's been part and parcel of this problem in terms of the country, closing up Rafah crossing, and also being part and parcel of the problem of not allowing free flow of goods, aid, etc. From Israel, of course, is the only country that shares the land border with Gaza.
So this is, one of the strange things that I have not myself properly understood is a kind of muted response from countries like Egypt, like other countries in that region, to Israel's offensive in Gaza. Could that be about to change?
Well, I don't think so. I think it's all PR. Everybody is realizing that Benjamin Netanyahu is in his last days. This is the beginning of the end. And South Africa took a much more difficult stance when no one else was willing to do so. And Turkey realized also that their inability to intervene in this regard earlier on cost them a lot in the local elections. And I think Egypt also realizes that it goes on calling itself the largest Arab country in terms of numbers and the most influential in the region, but it failed to do something as simple as saying the word of condemnation against Israel. And I think now it's easier for many of these countries, particularly in the region, to condemn Israel, because the one South Africa did so, and they're now seeing Americans who are taking a much more tougher stance. A lot of the positions that Americans have taken over the past couple of days actually looking at sanctioning Israel further and not providing arms. So it's easier now for everyone.
In the meantime, though, you suggest Netanyahu's in his final days. We've heard a lot of analysis that one of the reasons the offensive is going in the way that it is kind of to keep him in power, because otherwise it would be the end of his government in Israel. But he still seems to be going ahead with the offensive. It looks like that's what's going to happen, despite the almost universal condemnation.
Yeah, it's going ahead alone. And after this, he's likely to go to The Hague. You are likely to have charges from the ICC coming. So the entire world has expressed, condemnation of what's currently going on. So he's all alone at the moment with his own henchmen in his war cabinet. But for how long is he going to kick the can down the road? We saw yesterday how Hamas, for example, retaliated and killed a number of Israelis. So not only you're talking hostages now, but you're also talking body bags going back into Israel. And I think the pressure from Israel, which is continued, by the way, every weekend we've got protests in Tel Aviv, thousands of people calling for him to resign. So we have to wait and see how long he's going to kick the can down the road. But I don't think there's any other runway at the moment in Gaza for him to invade. He went on Rafah, and yesterday we're told he's going back to northern part of Gaza. So he's running out of options. And I think it's just a matter of time before he's going to be even more isolated.
Thembisa Fakuda, thank you. International Relations Analyst, Senior Researcher and Director at Africa-Asia Dialogues. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, please do not ask me how I am. Good morning.
I heard.
The Sotho and Chiefs sharing points.
Yes, no pain for them. They were all 1-1, squaring off in KwaZulu-Natal and as well shaking up the points table. This is the Premiership action last night as they race to secure a top 8 spot going down to the wire. Ashley Dupree getting the visitors to the Moses Mabhida Stadium off to the perfect start. He netted with just 2 minutes of the match played, and Sipana Letswalo, he shared the spoils. That was thanks to his goal for AmaZulu. Now, Amakosi are hoping to salvage a woeful season by ending as one of the best 8 teams, and they ended the evening just holding on to 8th place with 35 points from 28 games. Here's their interim coach, Kevin Johnson.
We had a good first half. We should have scored more than the 1 goal. We take control of the game in patches, which I think we can improve on. But we have a big shout in the end, whereby I think Motoa makes 2 magic saves in the 95th minute. But he gets man of the match, and we go with 1 point. I thought we should have gone on with 3 points.
In the meantime, Cape Town City and TS Galaxy cemented their position in the Premiership top 8 despite playing to a 1-1 draw in a league clash at Cape Town Stadium. Both teams will be reasonably happy with the outcome, particularly following the 10th place Golden Arrows and 11th place Chipper United also settling for a 1-1 draw in their league fixture at the Mpumalanga Stadium in Hammersdale. Elsewhere, Arsenal moved to the top of the English Premier League with a 1-0 win over Manchester United at Old Trafford, taking the title race to the final day. The 3 points moved them back 1 point ahead of reigning champions Manchester City. City have a game in hand. They'll be playing against Tottenham tomorrow night. Another match, Rodrigo de Paul's superb volley earning Atletico Madrid a 1-0 win over Celta Vigo to virtually guarantee Champions League football next season. Cricket, Sikandar Raza and Brian Bennett hit half centuries as Zimbabwe secured an 8-wicket consolation victory over Bangladesh in the final 2020 international in Dakar to avoid a 5-0 whitewash. And tennis action, the Australian Open champion Aryna Sabalenka cruising into the last 16 of the Rome Open with a straight sets victory over Diana Yastremska, 6-4, 6-2. And finally, Novak Djokovic crashing out of the ATP 1000 Italian Open in the third round. The 24-time Grand Slam champion beaten by number 29 seed Alejandro Tabilo, 6-2, 6-3. It was Djokovic's first match since he was accidentally hit on the head by a water bottle while signing autographs after opening a match win on Friday. That's a wrap. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Right, plenty to come in the next little while. ZANU-PF, and are they playing a role in our election? That's coming up. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the MK Party KwaZulu-Natal coordinator Simphiwe Mpungose says the party is not concerned following the fallout between its leader, former President Jacob Zuma, and founder Jabulani Khumalo. Experts in the construction industry are expected to visit the site of the building collapse in George in the Western Cape today. The death toll in the tragedy by last night was at 20. And the Senzumehiwa murder trial is expected to resume in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy start to the run from Pretoria down to Joburg. We've got a collision scene on the M1 South at the Brockfontein interchange. Coming from John Foster or coming down the bottom of the N14, Ben Schoeman Highway. Both of those highways backed up into that crash scene. And then a road rage incident, early for that, isn't it? N1 South at Samrand. So left lane is closed and that queue extending from the crash scene at Brockfontein then all the way down through to Samrand Road. Broken down vehicle on Joburg's M1 North before Buccleuch. 2 lanes are closed. Traffic starting to push back towards Rivonia Road at a new week, but no change in the roadworks heading in towards Clayville. Traffic already backlogging on the way towards the airport. Durban's N2 has been reopened after overnight roadworks between Umgeta Road and Spaghetti Junction, but it is heavy. There may be an additional lane restriction for some roadworks going on, but there's also a broken down vehicle as well. So Umgeta Road through to Spaghetti Junction, very heavy again for this time of the morning. Very unusual. Cape Town, Mitchell's Plains, busy all over. AZ Berman up towards the R300 out towards the M7, and quite a significant backlog around the major junction in the Delft area. Stellenbosch Arterial coming through from the R300 and Symphony Way up to Stellenbosch Arterial. That junction, quite a heavy backlog. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The business update on SAFM.
Ntaling Lechele, good morning. How are you doing?
Morning, Stephen. I'm well, thanks. I hope you're good.
Asian markets, US markets, the JSE, how's it all looking?
Well, equity markets are doing fairly well. We saw US stocks end last week on a high note, trading mostly in the green. Now, besides economic data, traders have been digesting earnings reports, and according to FactSet data, results so far have helped stocks remain resilient. 92% of S&P 500 companies have reported results, with about 80% of the firms surpassing Wall Street forecasts. Now, over in Asia, those markets are trading mixed, tracking most of its global peers and assessing China's stronger than expected April inflation print. This, of course, while eyeing the US CPI data, which is out later this week. Back at home, the JSE ended the week on a high, with the all share gaining close to 0.4%. We did see some strength in the local unit, with the rand trading below the 1850 mark at 18.41 to the dollar.
And the UK no longer in a recession.
Now, Britain's economy has been under strain for quite some time, but things are taking a turn. During the first quarter of the year, the nation exited a technical recession, delivering growth of 0.6%. This also provides some relief for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ahead of the general election. Now, although tepid, economists have welcomed the print as it topped expectations and was the strongest rate of quarterly growth since the end of 2021. The expansion was driven by growth in the services sector, where output ticked up 0.7% during the quarter after dipping last year. Now, moving ahead, forecasters expect the UK to grow slowly this year, especially as high interest rates and inflation continue to weigh on citizens' disposable incomes.
And AstraZeneca and Pfizer, they see value in France. They're investing R1 billion.
They seem to be betting on France, Stephen. That's as both healthcare companies plan to invest in the country. Pfizer is planning to invest about $538 million to build up its research and development work in the country, while AstraZeneca announced a investment of about $388 million for its site in Dunkirk. Now, the pledges come ahead of the nation's Choose France Business Summit, which kicks off today. Now, President Emmanuel Macron plans to woo investors. Macron aims to improve Paris's role as a top European business capital, this despite being a laggard on the global scale, especially when it comes to countries like the US and the UK. Besides the mentioned investment, the nation also revealed that Morgan Stanley will be creating about 100 new jobs in the country, and it's also received another pledge from German aviation company Lilium.
Intal Chelep, thank you very much indeed. Back in an hour, more business news through the day here on SAFM.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Standard Bank are the proud sponsors of Africa Update on Sunrise with Stephen Grootes. Standard Bank.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Arrest Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
So Egypt joining our genocide petition against Israel at the International Court of Justice. A lot going on here.
Stephen, a lot going on. Looking at the foreign ministry yesterday, saying that part of their campaign is to force Israel to halt a pending major military operation in Rafah. Remember also, Stephen, they are pushing that their action of Israel, it is constituting what they call a violation of international law, humanitarian law, and the Fourth Geneva laws of 1949 regarding the protection of civilians during the wartime. Now, it is interesting, Stephen, that South Africa on Thursday also have lodged another application to the court to stop Israel on its military operations in Rafah. And here we are talking about 1.5 million who are affected by this military operations meted by Israel to ordinary Palestinians.
And then hundreds of protesters gathering in the Tunisian capital. They want the release of journalists, activists and opposition figures.
Even they've been challenged in Tunisia. It appears that President Prof said there's even challenges, Stephen, over this weekend, arresting one of the lawyers and at the same time arresting journalists. Now, there was a protest yesterday demanding the release of those journalists, activists, opposition figures, as well as to ask for a presidential election date, Stephen. They are now lamenting about the election date. Remember that President Kais came into power in 2019. Now, after seizing power, he has dissolved parliament, assume authority over judiciary. So there have been challenges in Tunis in terms of to deal with political activism as well as the independence of the other two arms of the state.
And then in Niger, the prime minister there, he's worried that Benin has been blocking Niger's oil exports.
Stephen, we know it was all about the military coup in Niger and Benin being part of ECOWAS. They closed their border. Now, what happened over this weekend? Benin blockaded Niger's oil exports to pass through Benin, and now Benin saying, Niger saying now it's a violation of a trade agreement between Niger and Benin and with their Chinese partners. And here we are talking of a lot, Stephen, 400 million deal between the two countries as well as the Chinese partner. So it appears appears that they won't even have any resolution to this conflict, because it appears that Benin will not open its border, and at the same time, Niger will not even agree with this approach by Benin in terms of trying to settle down the issue of ECOWAS by putting more sanctions to Niger.
And then in Mali, participants in their national dialogue, they want the military-led transition to democracy to go for another 3 years, really.
And that 3 years is 2027 if you look at our electoral calendar. Now, there have been a month-long nationwide consultations boycotted by opposition and some of the, what we can call some of the military leaders that have been concerned about this issue of Asim Goït since taking power in 2022, that there have been this delay of going to elections. But over this weekend, Stephen, they confirmed that one of the recommendations is to extend the military lead transition by another 3 years, and for him to also stand for the eventual election.
And then in our archives, you're taking us back to the 13th of May, 1996.
Even 28 years ago, the former and the late President Nelson Mandela had to appoint the new cabinet ministers after the then National Party withdrew from the government of national unity. You'll recall the Ministry of Agriculture was given to Derek Hanekom. Geraldine Fraser-Moleketi took over the Ministry of Wealth and Population by then. Muhammad Vali Musa took the Ministry of Provincial Affairs and Constitutional Development. Paulo Jordan, Minister of Environmental Affairs. Very important, Stephen, if one has to look during that period of even the cabinet was just reduced to 25 in 1996. Compared to today, where we have floated cabinet in most of our African governments. Asante Sana SG, as we are still leading the conversation, SAFM, observing the Africa Month.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you very much indeed. Africa Update on Sunrise with Stephen Grootes was proudly brought to you by Standard Bank.
When humans invented the wheel, we thought that getting things from A to B would stop there. But it didn't. Soon after, horses drew carts to deliver goods. And that could have been it. But it wasn't. Because the goods had to move quicker. So we invented cars and went from hooves to horsepower on highways. Then the goods got heavier. So we built tankers to ship the cargo across the sea. And then we needed a solution that was cost effective. So we built trains to transport the cargo. Then we wanted to receive the goods the following business day, so we built planes. But then we wanted a smaller and faster aircraft, so we invented drones. And it won't stop there. Because with the right mindset, there's possible. Then there's more. Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking to see how far we can take your business. Standard Bank is an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
19 minutes to 7. That's the number. You know the That's the time. You know the number 086 000 2032. Let's go to. Is it Amin in Durban? Amin, hi. You heard former President Mbeki wants a national dialogue. What do you think?
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you. Yes, I think it's one is that I'm not a great fan of Thabo Mbeki, especially after his failed policies of Giza, Gypsy, and Gear.
Okay.
Notwithstanding is that the man has a brilliant idea. We do need a national dialogue. The complexities are known by our experiences. But the founding document is there, Stephen. You know, the one of 1955, the Friedman Charter. I believe that also we need to ensure the incorporation or the pitching it within the incorporation of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is creating great impacts in South Africa. We must not be left behind as a third world country.
Yeah.
And I believe that the formula could possibly be that we need to, start from the present. The formula should be that we discuss all of our issues, inclusive of all race groups, of all classes of people, and should be the present. And then we move to the past in terms of the founding document. And then envisage collectively what kind of future that we want for our nation, our rainbow nation.
I mean, it's an interesting idea. Thank you. I mean, there's something in it, isn't there? And I know that this comes up from time to time, but, when someone is sort of, as serious as former President Mbeki, if I can call it that, someone is important, let me use that phrase, or significant, suggest that. And well, it's something we have to take seriously, isn't it? 17 minutes to 7.
Rise to the occasion with Season 5 of the Tastemaster SA, Tuesday evenings at 7 on SABC2. Follow the delicious journey as 14 of the country's best baking talents compete to impress the judges and claim the title. Only one will be crowned the Tastemaster and win the grand prize valued at more than 400,000 Rand. That's Tuesdays at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Which is the best way to reach success? Is it best to go alone, so you can go fast? Or for many to go together, so they can go far? What if you need to go fast and far? At RMB, we believe the best way to success doesn't make you choose when both are possible. When you need a thoughtful solution for financial complexity, there are only 3 letters you need to know. RMB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012-568-3233. That's 012-568-3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
14 minutes to 7. Good morning. The Human Rights Commission says it's watching political parties for signs they might break the law during the campaigns for the elections. It says they're particularly watching for comments that include threats or violent language or xenophobia or the defacement of national symbols like a flag or any disruption to a service like education. As you saw last week, the DA has been strongly criticised for their advert depicting a burning national flag, and the flag then sort of being reassembled at the end. Nomahlubi Kwinana is a commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission. Commissioner, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Stephen.
What are you worried about from political parties? What are you sort of watching for?
Well, we're watching for any conduct, utterances from these political parties, members of the political parties, or even just members of the public. Stephen, it is important that the political parties and their members remind themselves that in terms of our constitution, there is a right to freedom of expression, but which does not extend to propaganda for war, incitement of imminent violence, or even advocacy of hatred that is based on race, ethnicity, gender, or religion, and harm. So it is important that at all times they are adhering to the rule of law.
Are you able to act against parties during the election? I mean, things move very quickly. We're sort of, 2.5 weeks away. I don't know if you'd be able to do anything during the election. Would you have to wait until afterwards?
Well, unfortunately, Stephen, because there's always due processes insofar as we are concerned, one would have to investigate and at the right time would then have to act. But unfortunately, at this stage, ours is to echo the sentiments that it is important to uphold the rule of law, whilst at the same time we'll be monitoring any acts of violence.
Do you believe? I mean, you mentioned in your statement sort of desecrating or defacing, I think was the word you used, defacement of national symbols, and it does, Commissioner, as you know, take us straight to the flag advert. Do you think that raises human rights issues? Is there something? I mean, I don't know if anyone's lodged a complaint with you or if you would be the right forum, but is there something you'd be able to act on in that case? Do you think?
Well, at the moment, Stephen, remember we have heard that this matter has been referred to the regulatory body, which is Gaza, and you should allow them the space to then deal with the matter, because that matter is not yet before us. And until first time that the matter has been brought to us, then we can understand that from our side, it is for us to monitor any violation of human rights. And at the time that it will be before us, one can only look at it from that perspective. And we can only then pronounce on it until at the time when it will be before us.
Commissioner, I kind of knew you were going to say that, but I had to see if I could get a view from you anyway. There's, when you have an election, I've noticed that you have a moment, and I think we're going to see over the next, I would say, 5 weeks, kind of heightened emotion. From everybody, not even just political parties, by the way, but everyone gets a bit kind of, very sort of strong emotions. Does that worry you a little bit? We have a society with lots of tensions within it, and everybody gets a bit angry during an election. As the Human Rights Commission, one of your jobs is to make sure everyone kind of obeys the rules. Do you worry a little bit about these heightened emotions from everybody during this time?
Well, we are definitely worried, Stephen, and that is why, if you recall, from our mandate, amongst others, it is to promote, protect, and, of course, to monitor any violation of human rights. So we are looking at it from that perspective, whilst at the same time we go out there and educate members of the public of our diversity, and that is why we've come up with a project that's called SHINE, which is really about social harmony through a national effort. So in that space, that is where we try and say it is imperative to realize that we are a diverse nation and we need to be tolerant of each other's differences. We have seen from the number of political parties that have mushroomed, the fact that we now have independent candidates, and all that tells us a story about who we are as a nation. Thank you, Stephen.
Commissioner, thank you very much indeed. Nomaklubi Kwinana is a commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission. 9 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty busy around Gauteng. The R21 is a standout. There's queues north and southbound at Clayville. Now, these queues are earlier than normal, and you don't normally see the queue at this time of morning going north towards Pretoria, but it is there. Maybe some additional lane closures in place over the weekend. The R21, just north of the Olifantsfontein exit. Big queues both ways. It's important if you're heading down for flight connections to the airport. There's a collision on the N12 driving eastbound from Benoni through to Boksburg, or Boksburg through to Benoni, actually, going eastbound just before Atlas Road. It's in the right lane. It's not really causing a disruption, but it is slowing westbound traffic coming through from Benoni. Having a look at that. The Mike 1 fairly heavy today from Boysons all the way through to Smith Street. The ramp off the Mike 1 north onto Smith Street remains closed, as does Smith Street around the Mike 1 highway. Now, Durban's N2 opened after the overnight closure between Mgenera and Spaghetti Junction, but there's a stationary truck in amongst the roadworks and the lane closure, so you're down an extra lane, and it is a super heavy backlog extending back beyond Inunda Road. That queue as well, very heavy for this time of morning. It will surprise you. It will seriously hold you up as well. Higginson Highway coming out of Chatsworth towards Havenside looking really busy. Cape Town collision on your way inbound through Somerset West. It's on the N2, just approaching Victoria Street Junction, and that N2 on a Monday morning always carries some bigger volumes and some heavy traffic around the Milnerton region. Marine Drive at Milner Street or Milner Road. No traffic lights, so that run from Milnerton along in towards the Pardoned Island area, already queuing quite heavily. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
7 minutes to 7. Good morning. The African Transformation Movement, writing to the Electoral Commission, they say it should reject any attempt by the Zimbabwean governing party, ZANU-PF, to observe our elections. It's been claimed ZANU-PF would be sort of helping the ANC in their election campaign. But over the weekend, President Cyril Ramaphosa said ZANU-PF would not be helping their campaign, but would learn from the campaign because the two parties are sort of ideologically aligned. The spokesperson for the African Transformation Movement is Zama Tshona. Zama, good morning. Why do you want ZANU-PF banned or barred from observing our elections?
Thank you so much. Good morning to you and the listeners. Well, for us as the African Transformation Movement, first, let's just say the relationship between the two parties has been documented to an extent that in the middle of a global pandemic where no one was moving from one country to the other, there was a strange phenomenon of a airplane of South Africa which chartered members of the ANC, was used for private use to go and meet with ZANU-PF. They go to those extents when they want to meet, where they will go against all odds and defy all laws to actually come together. So that relationship is a worrying fact for us as the African Transformation Movement. Also, another thing that is a worrying fact for us is numerous allegations around ZANU-PF and their conduct during elections in their own country. So for us as the African Transformation Movement, that also adds to the challenge and the association and the relationship between the two parties. Now, ZANU-PF is not the only party that has been known to having been alleged to perpetrate or actually embark in processes that undermine the fairness and the free state of elections. We know that there are numerous allegations, and currently now the ANC is going to court over Advocate Erasmus's.
Zama, are you still with us?
It undermined the African Transformation Movement. So I'm just trying to show that a relationship between the two could actually be.
All right, sorry, Zama. Sorry to interrupt you. There was a break in the connection there. So would it be wrong? I mean, everything you said about ZANU-PF could be said about the governing party in Russia. You could say that, the Chinese Communist Party shouldn't be allowed to observe our elections. And the argument could also go that getting people to observe our elections, however they see them, might encourage them to become more democratic. I mean, it might not, obviously. But are you saying then that all parties, whether they be American political parties or British political parties or, Russian political parties, should not be allowed in to watch our elections, or is it specific to ZANU-PF?
Well, I think at this stage, one of the things that we're looking into, it is that the relationship itself. Yes, they may have problems that they have in their countries that they are dealing with, but there is something about the relationship between the two parties. Now, from the perspective of just imagine if they then shadow each other, learn from each other, when it comes to pronouncing the state of elections as being free and fair, what would be the pronouncement of a party that is in that has a relationship, a close relationship with the ruling party in the event that the elections are not favoring the ruling party, that is which they are having some kind of relationship with, and this may contribute. Let's say we have a situation where the elections were not free and fair, and you have this kind of relationship. How are they going to pronounce on the matter? Are they not conflicted?
Sure.
These are the issues that we are raising as the African Transformation Movement, because at a time when they have to stand up against the injustices that may be perpetuated by the ruling party? Would they be able to be independent in their thinking when they are even following each other during the campaign trail?
Zama Shona, thank you very much indeed. Spokesperson for the African Transformation Movement.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Modisa on the line from Mabato. Hi, good morning. The situation in Gaza, I presume the ICG court case. Modisa, go for it.
Yeah, the situation in Gaza is bad, my brother. Very, very bad. You know, for humanity to just to stand and watch. But now my main concern is, I believe they say charity begins at home.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the economic genocide and dehumanization of the Africans on the African continent. Before we can go and start and compare ourselves being a third world country, trying to play on the standards of first world countries, whereas we are so much. Beck himself admitted that Africa AU is weak, and being weak as it is, how is it going to help outsiders when we insiders are starving and dying and being dehumanized and being economically massacred and genocide being committed in the name of so-called Africanism?
All right, so Modisa, for you, we need to focus on our economy first. Is that what you're saying? To uplift, in the way that you describe it, black people?
South Africa, we checked the genocide, the economic genocide in Mozambique, in Swaziland, in Tunisia, everywhere in Africa.
All right, Modisa, thank you. Taki in Limpopo, hi, the Human Rights Commission. You heard them a moment ago.
Yes, Stephen, good morning.
Morning, go for it quickly.
Stephen, I just heard you saying this thing is not going away about the flag.
Yeah.
Which is the reality of the matter. It is a very important topic, particularly for South Africans, to really understand where is it going, how is it ending up.
Yeah.
Stephen, are you there?
Yes, I am. Your point quickly, please, Taki.
My point quickly, Stephen, is that I just don't know what the human rights are still waiting for, because on the question you posed to them, they answer to say they are waiting for ICASA. What is it that they're waiting for ICASA to do, for them to do what?
So ICASA has been asked to judge on a decision by the South African Broadcasting Corporation to not broadcast the advert as submitted by the DA, which features the flag burning and then being reassembled.
Which therefore implies that is the procedure they have to follow.
Well, they have to wait for someone to lodge a complaint against them. Now, she didn't say that no one had lodged a complaint against them, but I got the sense that, someone hasn't lodged a complaint against them. But even if somebody did, there would still be a process. I mean, I don't think she would be able to say at this stage what their view is.
Okay, they can do something after somebody did something. Okay, that's my understanding how that you've explained.
Yeah.
Let me just indicate something which you said last time about this topic, Stephen. You said, I'm making an argument. You said, I can argue that.
Yeah.
But I don't remember vividly how you put it, but you were trying to say that, like, banning a soccer, something like a soccer flag, or when it's a country's flag or something of that sort.
Taki,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Taki. I'm going to have to leave it there. I can't remember exactly what I said, but as I say, my job is often to argue with people, so I have to make arguments in lots of different directions. You were there, SFM, leading the conversation, 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, death toll update a week after the George building collapse and Mehiwa murder trial set to resume. Good morning. Today marks a week since a building under construction collapsed in George in the Western Cape. The death toll in the tragedy now stands at 21. There are still 31 people unaccounted for. Officials at the Garden Route District Joint Operations Centre says the focus continues to be on rescue efforts. Meanwhile, the South African Police Services say they've registered an inquest docket into the tragedy. Experts in the construction industry as well as the Public Works Minister Sihle Zikalala are expected to visit the site today. The National Police spokesperson Athlan Damate says information supplied by the building contractors is also sketchy.
What is concerning for us is that the company involved in this particular construction is not forthcoming with information. For now, we don't even know how many people are still underground. It's just guesswork. We have a list, but there are no supporting documents. If you're a contractor and you hire people to work on site, you should have their full names, surnames, but also supporting documents like identification.
In election-related news, the MK Party KwaZulu-Natal coordinator Simpiwe Mpungose says the party is not concerned following the fallout between its leader, former President Jacob Zuma, and founder Jabulani Khumalo. In April, Khumalo, in a written letter to the IEC, indicated he was stepping down as the leader of the party. He was then expelled after a fallout with Zuma. Despite his original decision, Khumalo, however, maintains that he remains the founder and leader of the MK Party. The party, formed in December last year, remains without so-called formalized structures with just over 2 weeks into the general elections. Mpungose says the matter between Zuma and Khumalo has been handled well.
We are not concerned at all because in all organizations that are well structured, that have structures, there are problems. We do not have permanent structures. We're running the organization on people on a temporal basis. So what has been happening is something that we expected and we've handled it very well.
The EFF's Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi has expressed concern about the rampant crime in Shoshanguve north of Pretoria. Ndlozi was among scores of people who visited the family of a 5-year-old boy killed by hijackers. The boy was fatally wounded when his father's bakkie was hijacked outside their home on Friday night. It's alleged that Junior Palane had gone out to welcome his father when he arrived home. A group of armed men allegedly fired shots, wounding the boy in the process. He later died in hospital. Ndlozi says something needs to be done to end crime.
The hotspots are known. The hotspots of hijacking are known. The hotspots of murder are known. But you don't have deployments in those areas. What are the police doing? What are they busy with? So we're going to follow it up. We're going to make sure, and that's the commitment we've made, we're going to make sure that the case of Junior remains part of the national agenda until justice is found.
The Senzo Mehiwa murder trial is expected to resume in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. Mehiwa was fatally shot at his girlfriend Kelly Khumalo's home in Vosloorus in October 2014. The trial was postponed 2 weeks ago to allow the defence to examine evidence related to the cell phone communication between all the 5 accused. The defence accused the state of engaging in a trial by ambush as the state introduced new evidence as court proceedings were due to get underway. One of the defence advocates, Charles Mnisi, says this jeopardizes their defense.
There's also new information which has just surfaced, that is got to do with accused number 3, my client. There's also a very mysterious number that is now resurfaced in terms of the document that has been sent overnight. There's also a new number, and all along the state was asserting that accused number 3 is not affected by these cell phone records, but all of a sudden there's a new number. I haven't consulted that. I don't know where the number comes from or applied for that number. How does it really affect him? How does it really affect him so far as this case is concerned?
And finally, former President Thabo Mbeki says Israel will not be able to bring about peace in Palestine with its military power. Speaking on the sidelines of the ANC's election campaign in Durban, Mbeki says peace will only be possible if Israel recognizes the rights of Palestinian people. This comes as international pressure on Israel is mounting because of increased attacks in Rafah in the south of Gaza. Mbeki elaborates.
And I'm saying that it doesn't matter whatever the government of Israel might think. They might think they might use their force and their might in order to annihilate the Palestinian people. It's not going to work. You can't kill that spirit of rebellion among the Palestinian people to say, we will fight until we get our rights.
Recapping the top story, today marks a week since a building under construction collapsed in George in the Western Cape. The death toll in the tragedy now stands at 21. There are still 31 people unaccounted for. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, rugby. The Springbok women celebrate a decisive win over Madagascar, securing their spot in the Rugby World Cup 2025. And in soccer, the PSL promotion race heats up as Pretoria Cullies and Amatuk's draw, leaving all to play for in the final week. Catch all the details and more just before 7:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy on the R21 option. This is between Pretoria and the airport. Unusually heavy for this time of morning. Unusual to see the northbound track backing up so badly towards Pretoria. And that southbound, if you need flight connections, make sure you got extra time to get through. The N1 option, heavy as well. Brockfontein all the way down to New Road before you're out of that. Durban's N2 jam-packed both ways on that run into and through Spaghetti Junction. Southbound, we've had a breakdown. It looks like there might be an additional lane restriction as well coming from Inanda Road. It's really heavily backed up towards 4 level, and northbound bad from the M7 this morning all the way through to the works at the Westwood Mall area. And then Cape Town, heavy pressure along the Marine Drive coastal run. You've got the usual backlog from Tableview down towards the paddocks at Milnerton, but then you pretty much stay in traffic from the high school at Milnerton all the way into Parton Island. It's the traffic lights at Milner Road that are down this morning, and there's just been a crash coming in from the airport. It's the N2 into Cape Town, just past Robert Sebukwe Road. 2 lanes closed, traffic building quickly. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 after 7, good morning. You're with SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this Monday morning. I'm still recovering from all of the physical exercise. The long walks were supposed to be a run, but really a walk for me over the weekend. So if you hear me make strange noises, it's because I tried to stand up, or because my right thigh moved in the wrong particular way. I don't know if you ever have that feeling. All right, more to come in the next little while. We'll find out more about the strange lights that we saw, from the big geomagnetic Earth sunstorm, whatever it was, the sunstorm over the weekend. We'll talk more about that in the next hour or so. We'll get the latest on the building collapse in George. Such a terrible story in the next few minutes. We'll speak to the Western Cape Premier Alan Winde. Also, the sort of high-level analysis, if you like, of our elections. What will change? What is different? What isn't? We'll speak to Professor Stephen Friedman. Looking forward to that. And then your mediated conversation today is around discipline in schools. We've seen so many cases of teachers and children being involved in fights and children attacking teachers. I mean, should a teacher know that this is going to happen? Do they get the support they need? What kind of intervention would you make to stop it? All of those questions coming up in your mediated conversation. Good morning, 10 after 7.
For years, Outsurance has been saying they'll save you money on your car insurance, or you can ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand cash if they don't. Here's Fundi, 46 from Brackenfell.
I was not happy with what I was paying. I heard about the 500 Rand from Outsurance, but they give me lesser amount for my car. I'm paying 523 Rand on my 2013 Hyundai iX35.
So here's how it works. SMS out to 30754. We'll give you a no-obligation car insurance quote. If the quote is less than you're currently paying, you'll end up saving money on your car insurance every month. And if it's more than you're currently paying, you can ask for 500 Rand. And if you've been with the same insurer and claim free for 3 years or more, tell us you want 1,500 Rand.
Give Outsurance a call. It's a win-win. You can't lose.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
The Democratic Alliance is on a mission to rescue South Africa. Together with the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa, we have a real chance to bring in a new government that works. We can turn things around, but we cannot do it without you. In this election, the stakes are simply too high. Every single vote is going to count. A strong DA can rescue South Africa. Join the rescue mission on the 29th of May. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
Support Slipper Day on the 31st of May and help children like me fighting life-threatening illnesses to reach their dreams. Visit reachfordream.org.za and make a difference. And don't forget to step into your slippers on Slipper Day. Reach for a Dream, inspiring hope. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio.
SAFM, leading the conversation. First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
13 after 7, good morning. The Police Minister, Becky Cele, says the companies working on the site of the George building collapse have not been properly forthcoming with the information about all of the people who were working there. At least 20 people have now died is the figure I have. 32 are still unaccounted for. 42 people have been pulled out of the wreckage alive. And there have also been reports at least one person was employed as a cleaner on the site and was then told to mix cement that was presumably used in the building. The Premier of the Western Cape is Alan Winde. Mr. Premier, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Stephen.
Obviously, the rescue efforts continue, and at this stage, it must be difficult to say if someone can still be alive underneath the wreckage there. I mean, as late as Saturday, someone was still found alive there.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't give up. There are, under 5 stories of concrete when it comes down. There are pockets and cavities, and that's exactly what happened on Saturday. And this cavity, when they lift layer by layer, and they were busy lifting, and there's spotters and there's people on the site while the machines work, and there was suddenly a call for silence, and these things had happened quite often in the beginning, and a call for silence hadn't come for a while, and the next thing they heard something. They put in the microphones and the cameras on these sort of long tubes, and there he was, and he was talking. It was just quite unbelievable, and said, "Can I please have some water?" I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. So that gave a whole lot more energy to the site. And then, I think you said 20. There's 21 deceased now. Another recovery overnight, and still unaccounted for 31.
Sure. We've seen claims that officials don't yet know all of the details of the people who are working on the site. I mean, has that been a problem? I realize different agencies, different parts of government do different things here. But from what you can see, have the companies not been as forthcoming as they should have been?
So obviously I hear what I see what I hear in the media, but I personally haven't met with them, but the Joint Operations Command have, and there's different layers. So there's the construction company. They're appointed by the developers, and then of course there's also the appointment of the architects and the professionals, the engineers, etc. And then there are subcontractors. So that was why when we first got the number of 75. That came out of the documents that the Department of Labour, took out of the office, the site office. But in further discussion in the Joint Operations Command, that's when the number was increased to 81. And so that's the number that we're working on. Obviously, that's a surmised number because, if anybody else had taken anybody else onto the site, or maybe if someone actually hadn't gone to the site, then that number could change. But so the unaccounted for is 31. We have to work with the documents that we've got. And of course, at the end of the day, we'll see whether they are absolutely accurate or not. But the construction guys have been engaging. And then every time we would open up a layer, they would sit with a Joint Operations Command and say, well, we think that in this room on that floor, people were cleaning. This is where people were tiling. This is where people were still building. And so that was to try and ascertain in which quadrant of the search site that we would have probably more people or less people as we were going in to look.
And working with national governments on this, I mean, is everyone able to keep politics out of it? I mean, you've found that has there been good coordination?
Yeah, we tried very hard right in the beginning. Obviously, we're a few days from an election, so you've got to be careful of that. But there's a very, there's a hierarchy in any emergency situation. And then different departments know that they have different, regulatory or legislative roles. So at the end of the day, the Joint Operations Command and the rescuers, all of these professional people, firefighters and rescue people, the dog handlers, etc., they are in charge, although because it's got people who've passed away in this crash of this building, that SAPS has a very clear role to play because it's a crime scene, and the Department of Labour has a very clear role to play. And I think we all found each other. We've got a nice system of working where people would go to the Joint Operations Command, which is just a short walk down the road from the incident. That's the council chamber of the district council, and that's actually where the off-site control is. So then you'd get a briefing, and then from there, if you needed to go and do what you need to do. So when Minister Pashla came, obviously he would be interested in the health system. So then Minister Mbomba would take him down to the hospitals, and this is also working together, private and public hospitals working together. And they would visit the hospitals, and then there would be a site visit. The site visit is controlled by the emergency people and the police. And then it's working very nicely. What would happen is there's sort of cordoned off areas because the public are also quite interested. They held a little bit further away, and then it's also the families. I mean, they are just a few meters away from the site in the entrance to the city hall, and trying to keep them up to date all the time. Because of course they are very, very anxious, because their loved ones are buried under tons of concrete, and it's a harrowing sight, an emotional sight, but it's at the same time you've got these miracles that happen, and people are brought out, and it's just amazing.
Mr. Premier, thank you very much indeed. Alan Winde, the Premier of the Western Cape, 7:19.
The Freedom Front Plus is a political party that has a plan to rebuild South Africa and provide equal opportunities to all. The party's policies provide real solutions to the problems facing the majority of South Africans. We do not only need a new or better government, we need a new dispensation where the power is restored to the people, where communities can make their own decisions about what is important to them, where the economy grows and everyone is afforded the opportunity to prosper. To realize this new dispensation, vote for the Freedom Front Plus.
Let's rebuild South Africa. Vote Freedom Front Plus on the 29th of May.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the Gaza regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
7:20. Good morning. Well, with 2 weeks and 2 days until the election, still intense campaigning around the country. Former President Thabo Mbeki in KwaZulu-Natal this weekend. So was the DA. Other parties in different places. At the start of the year, it seemed that this election could really lead to big, maybe radical changes in our government. I think some of those expectations are sort of damping down a bit. And to put it another way, there were several predictions several months ago that the ANC would fall to around 40% of the vote in this elections. I think people now see them as getting significantly higher than that, maybe 45% of the vote, maybe even over 50% of the vote. Professor Stephen Friedman, a research professor at the University of Johannesburg, as you know, a long-time watcher and analyst of South African politics. Professor Friedman, good morning. Thank you for your time this Monday morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you.
There was this expectation, I think, that this year would see a real change in government, and I think those expectations are changing a bit. Are we maybe seeing political change in South Africa happening more slowly than many people thought it would? And obviously, as we now know, the ANC is still going to be the dominant player after the elections.
Yes, that's correct, Stephen. And yes, there are changes happening, very important changes happening. But as you said, they're not happening at the pace that some people seem to expect. So yes, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of getting just over 50%, although certainly if you look at by-election results, it doesn't seem likely. But even if they don't get over 50%, there is simply no way you can do the arithmetic, which has a non-ANC government being able to form. So that means that the government which is formed after this election will have the ANC as the dominant party in that government. However, I think it's very important that we be aware that even if that happens, and 99% likely that it will happen, that doesn't mean things aren't changing. Because certainly if the ANC doesn't go below 50% in this election, I would put my head on a block and say they will go below that in the next election. And I think once the ANC goes below 50%, I don't think it will ever get back to 50%. Because I think what we're seeing is a drift in votes to smaller parties. So the ANC will lose ground in this election, whatever the result. The DA will probably also lose ground in this election because it's been bleeding votes to other opposition parties in the Western Cape. And now there's a possibility that the EFF will lose votes to the MK party. So your pattern is very clear. These newer, smaller parties which are beginning to form are going to get a foothold in Parliament, and they're going to be political players in the future. And I think what we're going to see is what you see in other countries which have the same electoral system as ours, which is that the largest party will no longer get over 50%. There are many countries with our election system where the biggest party gets 26% or 27%. And I think that's the direction we're heading, but it's not going to happen with much speed this time. But I think the ground will be laid this time, and we'll see it happen next time.
We've seen in metros in particular, where you have small parties, that they end up playing an outsized role. And many people are very critical of this. They suggest that the coalitions haven't worked in places like Joburg and Ekurhuleni. Obviously, people who support those parties involved in those coalitions or working agreements may support the idea and may say that they have worked. Would this be bad for democracy to have many smaller parties forming coalitions rather than what we sort of used to, one big party dominating or several big parties dominating?
No, not at all. It just takes a bit of getting used to. And I think one of the reasons why coalitions have been a problem is that we're still in our heads, we still have this model of the big party. So that you talk about an ANC coalition or a DA coalition. And they're neither. They're a coalition of several parties, which the ANC or DA might be the biggest party. But the effect of this kind of big party syndrome is that the smaller parties are only in this for what deal they can get out of the bigger party. So you join the DA coalition, if they don't give you what you want, you go over to the ANC coalition. And that's not terribly good for democracy. But as soon as people start adjusting to the fact, that it's not two big parties fighting each other with a whole lot of little ones deciding which one to back, and that it's actually a whole lot of parties with different perspectives who form coalitions depending on election results, then I think that starts to disappear because, if it isn't about two big parties, you have to make the coalition you're in work because you can't just say, if you don't give us 5 positions, you're going to go over to the other guys because the other guys are not going to be reliant on you in the way they are now either.
And Professor Friedman, I don't know if you saw this over the weekend. There was a comment by former President Thabo Mbeki. He said there should be a national dialogue after the elections. He said political parties don't have all the answers and people should look to, and the country should look to the people for solutions. And this idea of a sort of another CODESA, which has been hanging around and people have brought the idea back. I mean, would a national dialogue really work in any way at this point?
Well, national dialogue seems a very vague idea. I think what some of us have been arguing for many years now, and this specifically relates to the economy, is that, we negotiated a political solution in 1994, but we didn't deal with the economy. We didn't deal with the fact that it's just very difficult to get into this economy, that bright and energetic people in townships and shack settlements don't get the opportunities they need to participate. And for that, you do need a negotiation rather than a dialogue. You need the major economic players and other people in the society to come along and say, look, we realize that there needs to be change. We're prepared to make concessions to change things, and we expect you to make concessions in return. I think that is very valuable. The other thing I think would be a bit vaguer and more difficult, but I think we ought to talk about is that, 30 years after negotiating a non-racial constitution, race is still the elephant in the room in just about everything that happens in this country. And one of the reasons for that is that, we don't have serious conversations in this country about how we deal with the racial issues. So I think on both of those issues, there's certainly room for conversation, but I don't much like the idea. The thing that worries me when people talk about national dialogue is that they imagine something which happens in a conference venue for 3 days. And what I'm talking about happens all the time in all sorts of places.
Professor Stephen Friedman, thank you very much indeed. Research professor at the University of Johannesburg. As you know, a long-time political analyst in South Africa. 28 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. The Bok women won the Africa Cup.
Yes, that's right. Clinching the Africa Cup, booking their ticket to the Rugby World Cup 2025 with style. They beat Madagascar 46-17, defending their title as African champions. Here's their coach, Louis Kuhn.
I think we're proud of the fact that we came here. We had a plan. I'm proud of the goals that they executed the plan. We are without about 20 of our players here, so it's a younger group, and I'm just happy for the fact that they could pull it through, because I think there's a larger group that would love to go to a World Cup, and now we've opened up that opportunity for them. So very thankful.
Now, the race for places in the PSL promotion playoff will go down to the final game of the 2023-24 Motsepe Foundation Championship after University of Pretoria and Baroka, they recorded draws in their penultimate league assignments, with Magesi already promoted to the top flight of South African football. Second and third place remains up for grabs. And Kaizer Chiefs held to a 1-1 draw with AmaZulu in the DStv Premiership last night as their race to secure a top 8 spot goes down to the wire. Cape Town City and TS Galaxy cementing their position in the Premiership top 8 despite playing to a 1-1 draw in a league clash at Cape Town Stadium. And Arsenal moving back to the top of the English Premier League with a 1-0 win over Manchester United at Old Trafford, taking the title race to the final day. The 3 points moved them back 1 point ahead of reigning champions Manchester City, who have a game in hand. They'll play Tottenham. That's tomorrow night. And finally, golf. Rory McIlroy has won the Wells Fargo Championship for the 4th time in his career, finishing 5 shots clear of overnight leader Xander Schauffele on 7 under. Here's the winner, Rory McIlroy.
I don't know what's more unbelievable, winning a PGA Tour event for the 4th time, or getting my 26th 20-year-old me playing in this tournament for the first time. And if I had known back then that this is the way everything was going to pan out, I probably wouldn't have believed you. So anytime things like this happen, I feel incredibly lucky and grateful that I have the opportunity to do what I do.
More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Well, plenty to come in the next little while. We'll be talking about active citizenship in the next half hour. You with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning, 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, rescue and recovery efforts continue a week after a partially built building collapsed in George in the Western Cape. The death toll in the tragedy now stands at 21 after the building imploded last Monday. The MK Party KwaZulu-Natal coordinator Simphiwe Mpongose says the party is not concerned following the fallout between its leader, former President Jacob Zuma, and founder Jabulani Khumalo. And Lebanon's Foreign Minister Abdallah Abu Habib says his country fears an expansion of Israel's military campaign against the militant group Hezbollah. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty heavy driving out of Benoni through to Boksburg this morning. It's been a crash on the eastbound side. That's going into Benoni, but it's in the right lane, so it's highly visible to the big volume westbound. So from Snake Road, you pick up traffic all the way through towards the Rotherbolt Road exit. Further in, the N12 and R24 as they merge into Galulis, linking onto the N3 to go north. That is quite slow. And big traffic on the N1 today from Brockfontein all the way down to New Road, fully loaded across all lanes there. N4, Watermeer Street through to the N1 highway. That's on the Emelafani Highway. Going to be asked to queue up there again this Monday. Durban side, the M7 going into Pinetown stays slow. The traffic lights at Bamboo are still down. Queues not as bad as they can be. Well, in fact, there's two queues really. Hunt Stepman up to the N3 and then from the N3 up to St John's Avenue. So it is pretty bad. The N2 southbound, the breakdown before Spaghetti Junction and the roadworks is cleared. N2 south is starting to normalise. M4 Southern Freeway going into Durban. Looks like there may be some roadworks from last night around Clarewood. That is a little bit slower than you'd like. Cape Town side, heavy pressure on Marine Drive. This is the usual backlog from Tableview through Sunset Beach towards the paddocks. That's fairly heavy, but then you stay in traffic from the paddocks, passing the high school through Woodbridge Island, all the way down to a set of traffic lights on Marine Drive at Milner that are down this morning. So basically, Tableview to Pardon Islands, there's a extent of the delay there. And that queue is forcing a lot of traffic to hit the Coburg Road, so delays through Milnerton, Rugby, and then it gets pretty heavy through Brooklyn down towards Coburg. Get a change. Also, the N7 going north, a crash at both the Circle, delays heading up past Langa in towards the Epping area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intel Lenglet, morning again. Asian markets, how they're all looking today?
Well, over in Asia, those markets are trading mixed. That's as traders digest hotter than expected Chinese inflation and as they await Japan's GDP print, which will be out later this week. With that, the Japanese Nikkei is down 0.3%, while China's Shanghai index is flat, losing about 0.1%. Over in Wall Street, futures mostly in the green, with the investors eyeing CPI data, which would provide hints on the direction of monetary policy moving forward. On the local front, the JSE is on track to kick the week off on a strong note after it ended last week higher, with the all-share closing 0.4% as all indices posted gains on Friday. In currency markets, the rand is making gains, trading at 18.41 to the dollar.
And Sibanye, they seek a temporary debt reprieve.
Now, trouble at Sibanye Stillwater continues. During the first quarter, earnings slumped 72%. This was due to falling metal prices, particularly PGMs. Now, the miner has implemented a number of cost-cutting initiatives, including cutting jobs, but the lower metal price cycle is outweighing these initiatives. And so to relieve some of its cost pressures, the miner has approached its lenders to temporarily raise its lending covenants. This would provide Sibanye some comfort in this tough economic environment, especially at a time where it's also trying to shore up its balance sheet. Now, the CEO, Neil Friedman, has asked for patience while restructuring efforts are taking place. Friedman said that he's aware of the ongoing cash losses, which impacted negatively on the group's covenant ratio with its banks. Now, despite this, the group does seem somewhat positive about its prospects, saying that the drivers of the decline in PGM prices is only temporary.
And then the economic week ahead, lots of numbers coming out this week.
Yes, investors will be eyeing two prints in particular on the local front, including the quarterly labor force survey as well as mining production. Starting off with unemployment. Now, those economists are warning of a rise in the jobless rate, paying an increase to 32.3% in the first quarter from 32.1%, which was reported in the fourth quarter. Over in the mining sector, economists expect production in the industry to ease. In February, we saw output up almost 10%. Economists say that some monthly growth is needed to push quarterly momentum into positive territory and for the sector to make a positive contribution to GDP. Gains in that industry will likely be capped, though, by subdued global demand as well as commodity prices. And with that, Nedbank is only forecasting growth of 3.6% in March.
Intel Lenglet, thanks very much indeed. Back, of course, tomorrow, more business news for you through the day here on SFM. 24 minutes now to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Patrick on the line from Pietermaritzburg. Patrick, hi. You want to talk about ZANU-PF?
Yes, Stephen, I'm a bit concerned because this oppressive regime from Zimbabwe is sending ZANU-PF to South Africa. How is that possible when their elections were not free and fair? There's something not right there, Stephen. Why would they come here? Are they going to come and teach the South Africans how to rig their elections?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I don't get a sense they're going to play any active role, and I don't know if they really could anyway. But it's very interesting just to see. I must admit, I worry about saying people aren't allowed to come and observe our elections no matter who they are, if you know what I mean. I mean, if you're going to ban one company, one group, you'd have to ban all groups, and that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I know, and I'm 66, Stephen, so don't worry, brother. I've got a bit of aches and pains, so you're getting there.
Thank you, Patrick, on the line from Peter Maritzburg. I started the show this morning explaining I've been doing lots of walking over the weekend at very stiff and very, very sore places. My thighs in particular. Savage on the line from Tshwane High. Electric vehicles. Good morning, Savage.
Yes, Stephen. I was listening to Ramaphosa this morning on some TikTok video where he was so chuffed about how he met this company guy or this rich guy who's going to bring electric vehicles to be manufactured in South Africa. You know, he was so chuffed with himself. And he even went further to say that South Africa as automotive industry is so successful, we even build German cars for the Germans and for, for international markets. You know, one thing that gets to me, I know there's this trade agreement we sign. Why can't we produce our own car? It's something that bothers me. And
so you mean our own brand? In other words, something we design here and make here,
Yeah, make here and make sure that our president stop driving in a German car while we have this capacity. So I'm not sure what's wrong with our leaders that they can be chuffed about the slavery mentality that you are producing somebody else's goods in your own backyard, and you even try to sound like you are better than them. I mean, there's a worst form of slavery that you convince a slave that doing the job in your backyard, you are better than the master. So I'm not sure that as Africans, when are we going to do our own things? We are aware that our automotive industry, we have hands, we got manpower, we got factories anywhere from East London to Roslyn in Pretoria, where we produce BMWs. I'm top of the class cars. And we have in the past produced helicopters, defense industry materials, top of the class. Why can't we have a car, our president drive in South African-made car? Like we used to have a safari car. I don't know what happened to it, but you know, the sickness in our politicians and their lack of vision, you wonder, is it corruption or are they really that dumb? You understand, Stephen?
Sure.
So it's very, very bad, Stephen.
All right.
Can you please find somebody from the industry to explain us this trade agreement that forces us not to be able to produce our own cars?
I don't think the trade agreements stop us in any way. Savage, I hear you. You've got a very strong view. I don't think the trade arrangements stop us in any way. It's just, someone has to go and fund it. To start a car industry from scratch is a big, big thing. It really is. Gilbert in Cape Town. Hi, Zanu PF.
Morning, how are you?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried if South Africa is inviting ZANU-PF from Zimbabwe to come and observe.
Yeah, I think it's the ANC, not South Africa, but yeah.
Okay, let's say ANC. Because at the end of the day, we have got the right to select it. Because the last time I was listening, and then there was a big noise about the DA asking America to come and observe, and also for DA in South Africa. But now we have disputed elections in Zimbabwe. Sadly, as for now, there is no clear guidance to solve this problem of disputed elections, and they are coming to observe in South Africa. The reason, we don't know why.
Yeah.
And again, the war in Israel. That I was watching on a TV. That situation there is very bad.
Yeah.
That situation is very bad.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah, that's all I can say. Thank you very much.
All right, Gilbert in Cape Town. Thank you. Interesting about sort of ZANU-PF this morning. At 19 minutes now to 8.
Are you exposed to weak, flat, downright embarrassing jokes? You know, from that one friend who insists he knows why the chicken crossed the road. Or that Danny who ends up laughing alone from a joke last heard when polyphonic ringtones ruled the world. Are you tired of answering the door to strange characters and objects in the world of knock knock? Those dad jokes that are like a fly with no legs? They just don't land. You don't have to suffer from unfunny jokes any longer. Tune in to Live at the Apollo Monday to Wednesday at 10 p.m. on S3 and give your lungs the laugh they deserve. Channel your inner comic with BBC Primetime, only on S3.
Durban is yet again ready to welcome thousands of delegates and buyers who will be attending the Africa Travel Indaba at the Durban ICC from 13th to 16th May. The Indaba, that attracts delegates from across the globe, is the continent's leading travel showpiece. Hosting events of this magnitude continues to position Durban as a business and holiday destination of choice. Durban Tourism, together with community tourism organizations and local businesses, are eager to showcase that indeed Durban has more to offer. Durban is on the move. Join us at stand DEC 1G50. Durban is Africa's leading festival and event destination according to the World Travel Awards 2023.
Support Slipper Day on the 31st of May and help children like me fighting life-threatening illnesses to reach their dreams. Visit reachfordream.org.za and make a difference. And don't forget to step into your slippers on Slipper Day. Reach for a Dream, inspiring hope. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
17 minutes to 8 now, the time. Well, plenty going on this morning. You've seen the conversations around ZANU-PF. I think there's more to say in various directions around Gaza. Egypt announcing overnight that it will join our action at the International Court of Justice about, to sort of declare Israel's situation there, Israel's actions there, I should say, genocide that we understand is very important. Other conversations happening this morning. Lee on the line from Cape Town High. You want to talk about the flag burning advert from the DA?
Yes, I wanted to talk about this last week, but your lines were packed even,
yes.
So I knew everybody was burning. Basically, the DA didn't make a mistake, and they are right to not apologize because they didn't make a mistake. They said what they felt. They said what was deep inside their chest. The DA has basically been trying to get their lost support to the Freedom Front Plus. So as extreme as they could take it, is as extreme as they took it, and as extreme as they could defend it, is as extreme as they could do it. So for me right now, it's for the people of South Africa who keep on voting for the DA, this party that keeps on taking us back to the age-old times of apartheid, because they don't see the unity that is in South Africa. Basically, my problem with the DA is that everybody doesn't hold them accountable. They are running this country on the apartheid government template. What they do is what the apartheid government did perfectly, and hence why people who lived perfectly during those times will tell you that, no, we had electricity, we had water, everything was running fine, everything was ruined. What they are doing is exactly what they did, the apartheid government. Service the few, create an illusion that you are doing well. The communities which believe in that flag, the communities who hold that flag dear, because the coming of that flag meant that they were included in South Africa, will always feel excluded under the DA because the DA doesn't see them, it doesn't service them. And that is exactly what is meant by burning that flag. It's that when...
Unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure how that happened, but we literally just lost that line to Lee. We had it a moment ago, so sorry to interrupt. I mean, obviously, there are big arguments, of course, as you know, about what's happening in the Western Cape and governance there. The DA says strongly that it does serve everybody, that it does provide services for everybody. As you know, that argument goes on in many different directions. 086 000 2032, 14 minutes to 8.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Well, 2 weeks, 2 days to go until the elections. Conversations around what to do between the elections. In other words, how to make sure that you are not just sort of active as a citizen during the elections, but between them. Dr. Harlan Clutie is in the Department of Public Administration and Management at the University of the Free State. Dr. Clutie, good morning. Dr. Clutie, are you with us? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, Stephen.
How would you define active citizenship? I think, a lot of people aren't even going to vote. People who are going to vote are obviously maybe more active citizens, but how would you define active citizenship in your view?
For me, good morning to you and good morning to all the listeners as well. Active citizens for me is about being involved. It's about not standing on the sideline. You can either be a bystander or an upstander. But Project South Africa demands that all of us as South Africans play our part. It's to get involved in society. It's to be involved in governance and making your voice heard.
Is it about just talking? Is it about solving your own problems? Is it about something else?
I think if you look at our history, I'm a child of the 80s. There was a very vocal and very active citizenry in terms of street committees, making sure that the challenges that the communities faced at that time, that is addressed head on. So there was a deep sense of involvement. Even if you were at school, if you were in the church, in religious-based organizations and people generally had a very high sense of being politicized and being involved, and with the belief that through small actions in local communities, even in deep rural areas like Oudtshoorn or Graafrenet, there was this deep sense of that, yes, we can address these challenges, and small actions locally can have a big impact nationally.
So would this mean then, would you include leaders, officials, or would you exclude them if you've got a particular problem around, say, roads or something in your area? And this can get quite complicated because you would, in a perfect world, government would deal with many of the problems, not all of them, would deal with many of the problems themselves, and obviously that doesn't happen. So do you involve government or not?
I think it's a partnership. If you look at what the National Development Plan says, it says firstly that government admits that it did not succeed in making sure that this plan is internalized and inactive in communities. And then that plan concludes by saying that the work of fixing South Africa is part of civil society, private sector, government, and academia. And in my dealings, in my research, I have found that there's no shortage of people in communities wanting to make their communities better. But it has to be that partnership. We cannot exclude government. I think where we are moving into the next decade or so is that citizens in front and government following. We can't, there's almost a sense that I get sometimes speaking to communities and with government, is that government, especially local government, where I do a lot of my research, it's like they're doing you a favor, that your communities have to be satisfied with crumbs. And so it has to be a partnership between these four sectors. The academic community playing their role, not just producing research for the sake of research, but making sure, that research findings, that advocating for change within communities, making sure that the findings get taken seriously, and working collaboratively. That is the future, co-creating.
I think that people are fed up with officials. I think people get, sort of ignored. They're fed up and they're giving up.
No, definitely. I was a colleague of mine shared this, actually a funny story, but it's not so funny. He gets to a municipality and he asked the official, the official is just being obstructionist. And he asked, but now what happened to Batopele? And the official says, no, but Batopele doesn't work here anymore. Sure. It's that sense of, I don't care. And if you look at the lofty ideals of Batopele about courtesy and value for money, we have lost a lot of that. And so officials almost treat communities, not all of them, but there's a huge chunk of them of saying, working as if they don't care. So I'm saying public service, working for the greater good of society. There can be no greater higher calling than that. And like a colleague said the other day as well, where we try to get into a municipality, he says laziness and politics, that is the death of local government. And he's pinpointed exactly what is wrong.
You talk about politics, you talk about the fact that, if people don't lead, if people know they can get away with it, if there's no accountability. I mean, I've lost count of the number of times the Auditor General has spoken, or Auditors General have spoken about consequence management. I mean, that just doesn't happen, and that means that people then have nowhere to go.
No, exactly. If there is no consequence, if there is no reporting mechanism, if there is no way to address these issues, then people lose confidence. And you're rightly so. If you look at the review, the 30-year review that came out, The confidence levels has dropped from about 70%, I think, in 2007 to about 35%. So rightfully, people are losing confidence in governance and I think and government, in the ability of government to deliver. And so the confidence levels are low. And people say, why must I vote? Why should I vote? If you take my vote for granted, there's no dividend for my vote. And so the democracy dividend is almost left hanging. And that is the challenge, I think, of this new government that will be elected on the 29th of May, is to restore confidence in government. Can government in fact deliver? But it is a co-created space where communities will have to work together with government to restore that confidence.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Harlan Clutie in the Department of Public Administration and Management at the University of the Free State. 8 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good news if you're driving out of Randburg, the N1 North, which was quite badly backed up with peak hour volumes between Randburg and Sunninghill, it is starting to ease up. Cedar Road in from Danefern towards Uranium, very heavy. Some traffic lights out there. Also lights out on Malabongwe at Kaya Sand again this morning. So very heavy standstill traffic along that section of Malabongwe. And a crash on Joburg's N3 North at Modderfontein. Now, when you get them at that location, well, it's closer to Linksfield, actually. When you get them at that location in the morning, it causes havoc through Galuli. So the N3 backed up from Germiston, the N12 and R24 routes coming in from Ekurhuleni towards the Galuli interchange stays busy. Also the N12 heading out of Benoni through to Boksburg, busy down towards the Rondebolt Road exit. That's due largely to onlookers at a crash on the eastbound side, which is hardly having any impact, but the big traffic on the westbound being badly held up. At Durban this morning, the N2 northbound stays heavy from the M7 going through Spaghetti Junction into the work zone. The N2 south is under pressure from Umgena Road down into 4 level, and the N3 inbound's quite heavy today from Pavilion Mall right through to sort of Tollgate Bridge into Berea. That's an unusual backlog. Southern Freeway choked up through Congella as you head into the CBD. I think that's a lot of traffic that's been released from earlier roadworks around the Clarewood area. Cape Town Marine Drive, make sure you've got plenty of time to attack that route this morning. It is literally standing from Sunset Beach all the way down to faulty traffic lights at Milner Road. The N7 North is heavy from Goodwood up towards the Bosmanstown exit, and a lot of traffic on the M5. Today you'll pick up the queue at Kenilworth. You'll only get out of it once you pass the N2 inbound exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Eddie on the line from Cape Town. Active citizenship. Eddie, good morning.
Thank you, Steve. How are you?
I'm well. Go for it.
You know, Stephen, I think the gentleman you have there is spot on. But my thing is, I'm a solutions-based kind of person. So I don't know if you ask him from his research, how do we catapult everyone or trigger everyone to stand up? And I'll tell you why. I'll give you two instances, Stephen. Me and my friends are finance people, and in 2017 or so, I can't remember when, but when Dr. Zweli Mkhize was the Minister of COGTA, yeah, we came together and we said to him, can we pro bono go to the municipalities and help you guys, just help the people there to grasp their finances? It was rejected outright, and I said to him, so you guys are basically saying you love the chaos that is there because then it's easier for you guys to steal. The second instance, Stephen, is when Patricia de Lille was, I think it was the mayor of Cape Town or so at some point, yeah? So she was going from community to community to speak to the people. And I said to her in one sitting, tell me, ma'am, you know Belleville Station is a place with hospitals, it's a long distance, it's an interchange. On any given day, you will have maybe close to 500,000 or 400 people going through that place. Why don't you have running toilets there?
Yeah.
And she turned around and said to me, no, you are just an ANC boat, you're not wanting to solve things. And I said, so is everything reduced to politics? Because in my mind, behind the politics, there are real people with real problems, you know. So why must we reduce everything to politics? So those are the things. So ask the gentleman, I think he does a lot of research. How do we get everyone active and catapulted or
Yeah.
triggered to do something, because we talk and we talk and we talk, and I feel like I'm an action person. I want to stand up and go do something, Yeah.
No,
Thank you.
Eddie, I can hear your frustration. I mean, you just get pushed away, basically, turned away each time.
Yes, 100%, Stephen.
Sure.
So politics or no politics, for me, there are communities behind this, real people with real problems,
No, absolutely. Eddie in Cape Town, thank you. Loyiso, hi. You heard, I think it was Savage, about car production in South Africa. He wants a South African car. Go for it.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I've just been triggered by the gentleman who called in earlier. This has been a no-brainer to me. I'm looking at the skill level, engineering skill level in South Africa. Not only do we assemble European cars, we've got inbuilt capability.
Yeah.
We've got. Say we go to the heavy equipment space, which involves heavy engineering. We've got some of the best in the world. We've got Bell equipment that is from Natal in, I think in I've forgotten the coastal town there, where they export coal.
And do you mean Newcastle? Richards Bay, the Richards Bay coal terminal. That's what you mean. Yeah.
Bell equipment is an indigenous, proudly South African, homegrown company owned by a family. They are in about 170 countries. They compete head on with Caterpillar.
Yeah.
That is how good they are in that space. They do heavy equipment, everything, bulldozers, graders.
So Loyiso, I mean, I would like to see a South African car brand, but I wonder if it's economically viable, because because you're going to have to start everything from scratch, whereas the European, and I must say the South Koreans and the Chinese have been designing cars for longer than we have. And I mean, that we're going to have to compete with them, really.
Okay, there are ways around that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to start with the engineering capability that we have it.
Yeah.
Now, once you have it, you just need to have a political will.
Yeah.
For example, we first have to find a market. If we can find a market, I'm sure any of these people, up to Dinel, can build a car.
Yeah.
The government must commit that. The brigade, what do they call this? Something brigade. These official cars. These many official cars we find.
Yeah.
All official cars.
The VIP.
Primarily sourced in South Africa, and only by a European if there's no equivalent South African made.
All right. No, Loyiso, let's see. Thank you. On the line from the South Coast. Very interesting. So it's interesting conversations that get sparked. You never know where things are going to go. Good morning. You with SFM leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, George building collapse, death toll rises, and political parties urged to lead the fight against crime. Good morning. Rescue and recovery efforts continue a week after a partially built building collapsed in George in the Western Cape. The death toll in the tragedy now stands at 21 after the building imploded last Monday. George Municipal spokesperson Chantal Edwards-Close says there's an urgent call for professional psychosocial support practitioners fluent in Chewa, Portuguese and Shona languages to assist survivors and their families. She says rescue workers and other role players have been on site for 160 hours.
The confirmed statistics for the incident are total estimated individuals on site when the incident occurred 81, rescued and recovered 50, of which 21 are deceased, currently hospitalized 15 and unaccounted 31. The primary focus continues to be on rescue efforts. With this in mind, we are also proactively setting up plans to expedite the identification of the deceased. With the support of forensic pathology services and South African police services, we endeavour to fast-track the process. This fast-tracking process, among other benefits, helps bring closure to families.
In election-related news, The MK Party KwaZulu-Natal coordinator Simphiwe Mpongose says the party is not concerned following the fallout between its leader, former President Jacob Zuma, and founder Jabulani Khumalo. In April, Khumalo, in a written letter to the IEC, indicated he was stepping down as the leader of the party. He was then expelled after a fallout with Zuma. Despite his original decision, Khumalo, however, maintains that he remains the founder and leader of the MK Party. The party formed in December last year remains without so-called formalized structures, with just over 2 weeks to the general elections. Mpongose says the matter between Zuma and Khumalo has been handled well.
We are not concerned at all because in all organizations that are well structured, that have structures, there are problems. We do not have permanent structures. We're running the organization on people on a temporal basis. So what has been happening is something that we expected, and we've handled it very well.
Political parties have been urged to lead the fight against crime in communities. The call comes after a 5-year-old boy was killed in Shoshanguve, north of Pretoria. It's alleged Junior Palane was fatally shot when a group of armed men hijacked his father's bakkie outside their home over the weekend. Action SA's Funzi Ngobeni visited the family to offer support yesterday.
This young life will not be replaced, and many lives that are taken every day. As we are speaking here, 88 people are going to be killed in this country today. So what are we doing about that? I think it's important that political parties, and I'll speak on behalf of Action SA, that we take this matter serious of crime.
A 43-year-old woman is expected to appear in the Tonga Magistrates Court in Mpumalanga for the alleged murder of another woman. It's alleged the deceased went to the suspect's house to question her about a transfer of cash. Provincial Police spokesperson Captain Donald Mdluli says the deceased was assaulted until she lost consciousness. Mdluli says the bruised body of the deceased was found dumped in the street. Police are still searching for 2 more suspects believed to be linked to the murder. The Senzo Mehiwa murder trial is expected to resume in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. Mehiwa was fatally shot at his girlfriend Kelly Khumalo's home in Vosloorus in October 2014. The trial was postponed 2 weeks ago to allow the defence to examine evidence related to the cell phone communication between all the 5 accused. The defence accused the state of engaging in a trial by ambush, as the state introduced new evidence as court proceedings were due to get underway. One of the defence advocates, Charles Mnise, says this jeopardizes their defence.
There's also new information which has just surfaced, that is got to do with accused number 3, my client. There's also a very mysterious number that is now resurfaced in terms of the document that has been sent overnight. There's also a new number. And all along the state was asserting that accused number 3 is not affected by these cell phone records, but all of a sudden there's a new number. I haven't consulted that. I don't know where the number comes from, who applied for that number, how does it really affect him, how does it really affect him so far as this case is concerned.
And finally, Lebanon's Foreign Minister Abdallah Abu Habib says his country fears an expansion of Israel's military campaign against the militant group Hezbollah. The Iran-backed group has said any deal to reduce tensions can only be discussed when the Gaza war ends. The BBC's Hugo Bachega reports.
The deadly violence along the Lebanon-Israel border has raised fears of another war between Israel and Hezbollah, the powerful militia and political party that is supported by Iran. Israeli officials have threatened to use military force against the group if diplomacy fails to de-escalate the situation. Here in Lebanon, the Foreign Minister Abdallah Abu Habib said he was concerned that Israel could intensify attacks on targets linked to Hezbollah, but that he didn't believe there would be a ground offensive.
Recapping the top story, rescue and recovery efforts continue a week after a partially built building collapsed in George in the Western Cape. The death toll in the tragedy now stands at 21. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. Tonight, Liverpool will face Aston Villa in a crucial Premier League match, with a win possibly securing a Champions League spot for Villa. Meanwhile, in rugby, the All Blacks captain Sam Cane announces his retirement from international rugby at the year's end. Full details just before 8:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Northern parts of Joburg are really heavy this morning. Lights out on Cedar Road from Broadacres down towards Uranium, and then Malabongwe at Kaya San. There's lights out there, very heavy in from Cosmo, and big delays if you're heading out towards the Lanceria side. Also some traffic lights down on Bowling Avenue at Kelvin, so if you're on your way to Santon, that's heavy. And Winnie Mandela onto Santon Drive's really badly backed up as you turn into Parkmore, and then a collision involving a pedestrian on Santon Drive down towards Grayston, so it's all heavy there. Big traffic through Galulis. N3 North has a crash at Linksfield, queuing up from Germiston behind that N12 and R24 routes. Really quite heavy coming in from their from their Edenvale exits on the Ekurhuleni side. Durban, so much traffic through Spaghetti Junction today, northbound on the N2 from the M7 through the interchange, N2 south from Inanda Road, and then big queues getting through on the N3 with a queue that extends right down to sort of Tollgate Bridge area. M4, the Southern Freeway, that's heavy approaching the CBD, and Cape Town major delays for motorists coming out of Tableview this morning. No lights right down the bottom of Marine Drive at Milner as you come out of Milnerton into Parton Island. That queue is all the way back to Sunset Beach, Dolphin Beach territory. It is heavy. Big spillover jamming up Kuberg Road in a couple of areas as motorists head to that alternative routing. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 minutes after 8. Good morning, you're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. You heard that conversation around active citizenship, and it's so interesting how immediately you get responses saying, people are kind of almost try and be active, but they don't know what to do. And I think that's one of the problems that we have. I think it's a huge problem. You just don't know how to actually be active. And when you do, you sort of get stopped at every turn. And I think that's a major problem. So I think that's one of the things that we get that really is a major problem. We'll speak to the Judicial Officers Association in a little while. There's a lot going on in this sort of dispute. Let me call it a dispute for the moment, although not a legal dispute between, the people who represent magistrates and government at the moment. It's a very complicated situation. We'll talk more about the sort of solar storm that caused the light show. I know some people in South Africa did see it, big thing in the northern hemisphere, but something we need to understand a little better, how solar storms work. And then don't forget, discipline in schools, a major issue at the moment, really is a major issue. We'll be talking about that in your Mediated conversation from 8:30. Good morning, 9 after 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Well, there's been all sorts of conversations after the Judicial Officers Association of South Africa. They represent mainly magistrates, Juasa. They said that they might even contemplate some kind of industrial action because they simply have not had proper salary increases. Now, the way this works is that the Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers essentially decides how much they should be paid. And there's supposed to be a series of major reviews over the years. Every 5 years there's supposed to be a big review, and that sort of hasn't happened. Magistrate Neelan Karakan is the president of the Judicial Officers Association. Magistrate Karakan, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and thank you once again for this platform.
You've been talking and you've been listening to comments made by the Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers. You suggest they've misunderstood the situation. Why do you say that?
Stephen, I think they're actually being disingenuous and a bit reactive rather than proactive in resolving the issues that we have. Their response to our position, the information that they've tried to circulate, and they went on national TV in response to what we have made the public aware about. And their response is wholly inadequate. The information that they are trying to spin is that they are actually doing their job and that magistrates in the country, they are currently, asking for something that they don't deserve. The impression that is they are trying to create is that we are actually getting a cost of living adjustment each year. And in fact, we are getting a major review every 5 years. And in real and practical terms, that has not happened. There's been no major review every 5 years. There's been discussions about it, that I'll agree to, but the actual major review has not been happening. In fact, the last major review happened in around 2007, 2008. Now, if that is the factual position, what exactly is the Independent Remuneration Committee saying? The commissioner, Mr. Chi, when he went on national TV to make those statements very boldly, as if magistrates are totally out of line. I don't know, really. I don't know what he's saying. Because in truth and in fact, he is wrong and misleading the public generally. And I'm not sure as to for what purpose, because it purely prejudices us once again.
So so you say there's supposed to be a major review. Okay, the major review is the technical exercise that you would undergo to get to the result. The result that you obviously want is a salary increase, right?
The major review, Stephen, deals with the changes in our roles, our duties, and our position in itself. Remember, South Africa is very unique compared to other countries worldwide where you have this anomaly of a magistrate and a judge. In South Africa, our magistrates, that profession, we have clearly become professionalized. We are not ordinary lay magistrates like in the United Kingdom, where ordinary people, who have a standing in society, you can become a magistrate and you deal with petty matters. In South Africa, the situation has totally evolved into a situation where the magistracy, the lower court magistracy, is largely doing the work of the High Court because the legislation has allowed the magistrates to perform most of the duties that a judge of the High Court would ordinarily perform, whether it's murder cases, whether it's divorces, whether holding government to account. We've got that legislation within the lower court. So our situation has evolved, and obviously the parity in salaries from the highest paid judge being our Chief Justice to the lowest paid judicial officer being the district court judge or magistrate. There needs to be parity and fairness.
Okay. If there had been a review then, and a proper review, you think you would be in a much better position now. How much do you think you've lost out by? I mean, have you lost out? Do you think that is a very significant portion of money?
Stephen, it is shocking what we have lost out on, because year on year, our salary has diminished because the IRC has not kept up with inflation. When they have been recommending, making their recommendations to our president, they've always been recommending way below average inflation-related increases. And as I said previously, it has even happened that we have received a 0% increase for the year. Now, who in this day and age in our country can really survive in that fashion? I'll repeat, our magistrates are financially strained, and I'm going to repeat that many of them will be going under debt review or become insolvent. We cannot have that situation, because if it happens, we will have magistrates sitting on the bench that are financially embarrassed, but they need to deal with financial matters and pass judgments involving money matters that could be dealing with millions of rands. And it should not be. We need to protect the lower court judiciary.
Are you still looking at industrial action, magistrate?
Stephen, you tell me, what option do you think we have? Do you have a suggestion for us? If someone can give us a solution, or if some role player can come to the party to say, yes, this is the proposed solution, whether it's the Minister of Justice, the IRC, or the Office of the President, or even Parliament itself through the select committees. If someone can come through to say, we are taking ownership of this problem, we acknowledge the problem, we respect the problem, and the argument that there's no money, that is a ridiculous argument. Because remember, whenever there's a need for a commission or there's some type of issue that comes up, government and treasury always finds the money. But when it comes to the magistrates, unfortunately, you get nothing. You get nothing purely because we say there's no money, and so be it. And what do? We just need to just suck it up and move on. And there's no place for us to go.
Magistrate, thank you very much indeed. Magistrate Neelan Karakan is the president of the Judicial Officers Association of South Africa. I'm very worried about this dispute because it doesn't seem to be going in a good direction, and I'm not seeing progress either. 16 minutes after 8.
In the heart of Africa, where our ancestor spirits echo through the ages, lies a legacy as rich as the soil beneath our feet. the land of our forefathers, which holds the key to our future. For years, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania has led the fight for justice, equality and self-determination. We've been relentless advocates for the people of Africa. As we face a new era, the PAC stays true to our founding principles. We protect our land, preserve our heritage and shape our future. Let's create a future where every African child can grow with pride, dignity and hope. Together, let's write the next chapter. It's our land, our legacy, our future. Vote PAC.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the CASA regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
18 minutes after 8, Unati on the line from Gqeberha about car manufacturing. You see, Savage, you started something with your conversation around South African car. Unati, hi, good morning.
Morning, LG. I trust that. Yeah, well, first thing, man, what happened to your WhatsApp line?
What do you mean? Because we haven't played any WhatsApps this morning.
Oh, okay.
No. It's still here. It works. We just haven't got there. We've had lots of calls. Been a busy morning.
Oh, okay. No problem then. A quick one, man. You said something when you mentioned the Korean nations about.
I said South Korea and China make lots of cars. Yeah.
Yes. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, you said, they are ahead of us, and I think we just need to start. And it also, boils down to the agreements that the country has with all these different, countries that are key manufacturing nations. Because if you go to China, the company that recently opened here in South Africa, the Beijing Automotive Company. That company is owned by the state. And all companies, even such as Daimler Chrysler, when they go to China, they need to partner with the state company. And exactly what the previous caller had mentioned to say, and the agreements that they have there in place, they are that with Beijing, they do all those armored cars for all the official government. So I think it's something that we can be able to do, and we put in those laws to say for all municipalities, for all government officials, they are only driven through these specific vehicles.
So Nati, I mean, that's true. But what, for example, if the South African car costs twice as much as a South African car? Now the municipality must pay twice as much for the car. Do you see what I mean? I mean, this is where it gets a bit complicated, doesn't it?
I think all those other, details can be fixed. I don't think it would be expensive. Look at what Ghana has done. Ghana, they've produced, cars, and I think they are at a better and a greater price than what you would be paying if you were buying a foreign manufactured car.
I don't know. I don't know if it'll work. I mean, we can see.
Let's bring the new minister. Just that, I can't say let's bring, because it's 2 weeks now. I don't know how much, Minister Patel would be able to talk about on this matter. But let's bring in people from the DTIC to give us, guidance around this, to say what is the plan for the country in this regard, and what laws do we really need to change so that we are able now to capture this market, which we know is big in South Africa.
All right. Well, nice and Gqeberha. Thank you. I mean, the car market, there are lots of questions one way or another. You're with SFM, 21 minutes now after 8.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
Well, over the weekend, there was, I suppose you would call it a space storm. Maybe a solar storm is a better phrase. And it's all about the behavior of the sun, which created lights that you could see at night in Danger Bay in South Africa. Big light show in the northern hemisphere as well. And essentially it's because of solar flares coming off the sun. And as you know, all of the heat and light and all of your solar-powered electricity and everything else comes from the sun. It really is the sort of dominant feature in our neck of the science of the space woods. Professor Martin Snow is a professor in the astronomy department at the University of the Western Cape and research chair in space weather with an emphasis on solar physics at the SA National Space Agency. In other words, he's the guy to talk to about the sun. Professor Snow, good morning. Excuse me, sorry about that. Professor Snow, there you are. Good morning.
Here I am. Good morning.
Good morning. What is a solar storm? Why does it happen?
So the sun has a kind of cycles of activity. You know, you could think of it as like seasons, except it takes 11 years instead of 1 year, like it does on the Earth. And there are periods where the sun's magnetic field gets twisted up and releases a lot of energy. We call these flares, and they often will eject blobs of magnetized plasma that can hit the Earth's magnetic field. And that's what we've been experiencing. We call that a geomagnetic storm. And the particles that are always streaming out of the sun that normally just get, deflected by the Earth's magnetic field, can get, find their way into the atmosphere at the poles. So there's always some aurora, near the poles, both the north and the south. But in this very large storm that we just had, the auroral zone expanded to much lower latitudes, including here in South Africa.
If we didn't have a magnetic field, then what? We'd be toast, and very burnt toast.
Yeah. The magnetic field definitely protects us from the constant wind from the sun. You look at Mars and you think, well, why is it so desolate? Where is its atmosphere gone? And that's because Mars doesn't have a global magnetic field the way the Earth does. So over the billions of years, the solar wind has stripped away most of Mars's atmosphere. So, yeah, we would be much more like Mars than if we didn't have our magnetic field to protect us.
Why do we have a magnetic field? Is it because, and I'm reaching deep into my sort of matric geography here, Professor Snow, is it because we have lots of iron in the core of the Earth that is circulating?
Yes, that is exactly it. The molten iron core of the Earth generates a magnetic field that surrounds the planet.
So in other words, it's all because of electricity, basically.
Well, yes, electricity and magnetism are kind of two sides of the same coin.
Okay. Are we then the only planet with a magnetic field like this?
No. Some of the outer planets, like Jupiter, has the largest magnetic field in the solar system. I guess the Sun has the largest one. But there are aurora on Jupiter and Saturn that we can see. Mercury doesn't have an atmosphere, so there's no aurora there. And Venus also doesn't have the same kind of magnetic field. So it's Earth and Jupiter and Venus, and I think Neptune also, they have aurora regularly.
You talk about the sun moving in 11-year cycles. Why does it move in 11-year cycles? Is that like our seasons?
Yes, and it's exactly why it's 11 years is still an area of active research. The magnetic field circulates through the sort of outer layers of the sun, what we call the convection zone. But exactly why it takes 11 years and why are some bigger than others, those are all mysteries that we're still trying to solve.
And the fact that people always talk about the northern lights, you see it in the northern hemisphere. Yes, I know it happens at the southern pole. Is that just because there's more land closer to the North Pole than there is to the South Pole? Is that why people see it there and talk about it in that way?
Yes, that's totally it. That there's more land and more people who can experience the aurora in Finland or Alaska. whereas there are not so many people on Antarctica. It's true that the few scientists who go there do get to see the aurora regularly, but otherwise we're actually pretty far away from Antarctica.
And trying to predict what the sun is going to do. And, my son, in other words, my boy child, told me for years when he went through sort of solar system phase, I think he's still going through it, but then so am I, that, in 20 billion years or whatever it is, the sun will eventually die down. Can we really predict what the sun is doing, what the cycles are?
So we work hard on trying to predict just, a few days in advance. And that's what SANSA does. They issue alerts and warnings every day. And, in broad terms, we can try and predict, 10 years from now, will the sun be more active? Will it be a big cycle or a small one? And there are many competing theories. Every 11 years, NOAA in the U.S. convenes a panel, and everybody gets to vote, and the votes always range, from the smallest we've ever seen to the biggest we've ever seen. And we still aren't quite sure exactly what works. There are different ways that you can predict, like how strong is the magnetic field at the end of this cycle to predict the next one, or does it take 2 cycles to come back? So, like I say, it's still an area of active research.
Professor, thank you. Professor Martin Snows in the Astronomy Department at the University of the Western Cape and Research Chair in Space Weather with an emphasis on solar physics at the SA National Space Agency. With SAFM, 27 minutes after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Liverpool have a mathematical chance of winning the Premier. They sound like Bafana.
Yeah, that's right. They need a bit of a miracle to top the log. Now, Liverpool hoping for a big slip up from the big guns. They are travelling to Aston Villa tonight, and they're hoping that there'll be a double collapse from Arsenal and Manchester City. Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp at the same time must avoid drama, receiving a yellow card against Villa, which could mean he will be banned from the touchline for his final game in charge of the club next week, and that's against Wolves at Anfield. Here's Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, I know that already for long. Like, when did I get the second yellow card? By the way, we could turn it around as well. I got only 2 yellow cards. I think a few of my colleagues got suspended, right? So I got karma over the years, obviously. But I don't need to, but it would be cool. So if I could do that, so it will not be from my side. But I will try absolutely everything to not get involved in any kind of discussions.
That match kicks off around 9 p.m. tonight. Now, Bayer Leverkusen thrashed 10-man Bochum to notch up half a century of unbeaten matches in all competitions. Xabi Alonso's side are now within 1 game of completing the first part of an invincible treble. Now, injury hit Bayern Munich, they beat Wolfsburg 2-0 in Thomas Tuchel's last game home in charge. Tuchel agreed in February to leave Bayern at the end of the season. Rugby, New Zealand captain Sam Cane will retire from Test rugby at the end of 2024 and calling time on a World Cup winning 12-year international career. The All Blacks now, they haven't played since they were defeated in the Rugby World Cup final by South Africa last year, and Cane was already on a sabbatical in Japan. Cricket action, 5 wins in a row has lifted the Royal Challengers Bangalore to 5th in the standings after having occupied the bottom of the table for most part of the IPL season. RCB beat Delhi Capitals by 47 runs in a match in Bangalore, and the win lifted them above Delhi Capitals with a better net run rate. Both teams have one more match left to play, with 1 spot in the playoff still open to both teams, while RCB will take on the Chennai Super Kings in the final clash, and Delhi Capitals will be up against the Lucknow Super Giants. And finally, some boxing news. Lauren Price became Wales' first female world champion boxer as she won via a wide points decision, and this after an accidental clash of heads, which meant the champion Jessica McCaskill was unable to continue. We'll have more sport here on SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. We'll talk about school discipline. That's next. You're with SAFM leading the conversation. Good morning, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, rescue and recovery efforts continue a week after a partially built building collapsed in George in the Western Cape. The death toll in the tragedy now stands at 21. And Lebanon's Foreign Minister Abdullah Abu Habib says his country fears an expansion of Israel's military campaign against the militant group Hezbollah. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on the eastern side of Joburg with a collision on the N3 North at Linksfield Road. It is just past Linksfield, but the traffic's pretty severe. It's backlogging from Helden AC to change in Germiston, and then behind that N3 queue, it's a big pushback on the N12 and the R24 routes. Both of those highways are jammed solidly back to their respective Edenvale exits, waiting to get into Galulis and get into that N3, basically turning into a crash delay as you come off those highways in from Ekurhuleni. So it's all very heavy. Otherwise, we're looking at some delays coming in on Kaya Sands Malabongwe. That's traffic light issues. Danefern four ways on Cedar, very heavy for this time of day. A lot of traffic lights down there, including Cedar and Uranium. Durban's N3 inbound has eased. There was a backlog from Pinetown right through the Tollgate Bridge. It's just busy now as you come from Sherwood through towards the Felix Clemini exit. N2 South, in Nanda Road down to Spaghetti Junction, queuing heavily. There is another break down there before Spaghetti Junction on top of the roadworks, and that's probably going to stay like that all day. You get an additional lane closure and you just get multiple breakdowns right across the day. Cape Town, a crash on the N1 at Eustonburg, so it's between Brighton Road and the Eustonburg exit going out of town towards Powell's. A heavy backlog coming in towards Eustonburg and towards Kryfontein. Traffic queuing as well to both sides there. And Marine Drive's been the other big story. No lights at Milner Road, and that traffic stays heavy from Sunset Beach all the way to Pardon Island. Big spillover of diverting traffic, jamming the Coburg Road option as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9 the time. Good morning, time for your first mediated conversation of the week. Over the last few weeks, we've again been reminded of the problems in our schools and of the massive problems we seem to have in the relationships between learners and teachers, and of the violence that we have in our schools, partially as a result. Just 10 days ago, there was an incident where a learner was filmed punching a teacher, the teacher eventually hitting the learner back. At one point, one of them was using a desk to hit the other. There are many different reasons for these repeated incidents. Some people blame the lack of corporal punishment. Others say teachers are to blame because they don't properly manage the situation. But if you look deeper at the problem, you can also see it's a symptom of so many other problems. It's about the issues we have in our society, the violence we have in our society, and often the difficult home life that our society has imposed on many, many people. So, is there scope for improvement? Are there ways we can improve the relationships between teachers and learners? Firstly, Professor Deliwa Khumalo is a professor in the psychology department at UNISA. She has particularly specialized in the area of discipline. We were expecting someone to represent teachers in this conversation. Unfortunately, we've just been told that they're unavailable, unfortunately. They were scheduled to speak to us. We are going to see if we can get someone to replace that person in the meantime. And then from the Department of Basic Education, the Acting Director for School Governance and Management in the department, Nkosana Takhedi. We start then with Professor Deliwa Khumalo, a professor at UNISA in the psychology department who focuses on discipline. Professor Khumalo, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, and how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I think it may be important to make sure we're talking about the same issue. How would you define discipline, particularly in a school context?
I would describe discipline as a measure that is towards correctiveness of any disruptive or challenging behavior that a learner displays within the classroom. And this has to be managed restoratively by the teacher in the classroom.
When we see incidents like this, and we've seen many incidents where learners are assaulting a teacher, how does that kind of situation develop?
According to my opinion, the thing is that we have different challenges within the community, and we are teaching our kids are looking at what is in the community in respect to respecting adults. I am of the opinion that, the respect that adults used to get from children is diminishing daily, and teachers are not immune to that because they are now adults within the school that the child has to listen to. However, because of what is happening around them in the society, they don't regard these adults as, guiders or their parents at that particular time when they're at school.
So does that mean then that they don't respect their parents either? They might not respect a police officer, for example, too.
What we're seeing, unfortunately, which is very unfortunate in South Africa, our kids don't respect authority. And it's a very big challenge that leads us to a lot of ill disciplines in our society. And that is cascading to schools.
How did that happen? How did the children lose authority, lose that sense of authority that adults used to have? And I realize, Professor Khumalo, there's an argument the other way. But first, how do you think it happened?
Firstly, I would like to correct that I'm not Prof. I'm Dr. Khumalo.
Oh, my apologies.
Okay, I would say the collaborative nature of us raising children has diminished a lot. Yes, we're saying it takes a village to raise a child, but are we really living with that value as a community and society? So we lost touch where we now had different pies, if I can put it that way, different slices of a pie where everybody has supposed to take their responsibility, but we're taking that responsibility fragmentedly. We're not coming together to do it collaboratively so that we support each other, especially our teachers.
I know a lot of people are going to suggest the reason that this has happened is because there's no corporal discipline, there's no corporal punishment. In other words, you can't hit children anymore. Is that the reason?
Not at all. I think corporal punishment was introduced and used as a measure at a particular time in our historical life. But right now we are living in a restorative justice era where we need to take a lot of effort to emancipate, teach, workshop, and show different people, role players, how important it is to be restorative than to be punitive. So I don't really stand for that argument that corporal punishment, because corporal punishment is no longer in schools, that's why kids are behaving like this. We need to have a mind shift that says collaboratively, how do you collaboratively come to solutions that brings about expertise from different people using restorative justice? Because corporal punishment is violent in its nature, and it teaches more violence, according to me. So I would not stand for that argument at all.
And Dr. Khumalo, when you have a situation like this, so we've seen the violence, there's a video of the violence between this teacher and this learner. Do you think it would have been possible for the teacher to know that something like this would happen, that they were losing control?
It is a very tricky question that you're asking, because teachers are guided by legislation. And one of the things that is said is that they must not hit back. They must not, they must give the right check if a child hits them. But we know that is not possible. Sometimes you need to understand that discipline and interactions are psychologically infused. So if a teacher is attacked, obviously they need to either flee, flight, or fight. So unfortunately, at this particular moment, the teacher's reflexes went to fight mode because he felt he needed to defend himself. Sure. So we need to have legislation also that takes into consideration that teachers are human and they will react to certain situations like any other human being.
What I'm trying to get to is, could an experienced teacher know that this learner might tomorrow assault them? In other words, you can judge the situation. You can see that this learner has no respect, is consistently difficult, consistently threatens violence in some way. I mean, would an experienced teacher know that this is about to happen, is what I'm trying to get to.
Okay. An experienced teacher will know the child has got behavioral problems. However, I don't think the teacher is in a position to know that this child is going to blow up at this particular moment.
Okay.
Because that child is also human, and whatever was happening within the classroom, we don't really know the context of what was happening at that particular moment in the classroom. But it is very difficult to can say conclusively that the teacher would know, even if they are experienced.
I've often heard people saying it can also depend on a class. In other words, a particular class of children will create a problem with a teacher, while another class with the same teacher will not have a problem. And that children in the class, learners in the class, can, in English you'd say, egg each other on. They encourage each other to take on a teacher, to refuse to respect a teacher. Does that happen, that it's children almost working together?
Yes, definitely. It does happen. And remember, in schools, as much as we want our kids to be angels, at schools we have kids who have got leaders. If the leader does this, they are supposed to support, or else they will be in trouble. So at some point, that these things do happen, where children will be misbehaving or disrespectful to the teacher in support of another learner.
So now we have this problem. This teacher surely should not have to teach this learner again. And this learner should not be able to, should not have to go in front of this teacher again. Obviously, you need a greater intervention in a situation like this. What kind of intervention do you think is needed when something like this has happened? It's not just this one case we're talking about. It happens often where we see a learner assaulting a teacher.
If I would give a pun, I would say, when we have discourse with our children, do we leave them? We don't parent them anymore. We don't become their parents anymore. However, we do. So even in this instance, a teacher and a child, there can be a mediation between the two that involves the families. It's a collaborative solution to the problem, where you'll have professionals who are dealing with different kinds of behavior problems, discipline problems, who come together and make it a point that the teacher and the child do reconcile. Because I'm sure at this particular moment, if you really go and dig, you will see it is not a big deal much that it happened, but the result of what led to the incident itself is dire. But we can look down, go back, and see how best we can help. As you were introducing the topic, you were saying there are a lot of influence factors that can influence the behavior. We can go back, look at the child's background, look at how the child is raised, how the family is doing, how the teacher is doing also personally, well-being, what might have been the cause of them both leading to that kind of violent behavior at that particular moment when they were trying to solve a particular problem in the classroom.
Dr. Deliwa Khumalo, thank you very much indeed. Apologies for the promotion earlier. Dr. Khumalo is in the Department of Psychology at Education and particularly focuses on discipline. You're with SFM, 17 minutes to 9 the time. Continuing a mediated conversation around discipline in schools. And Nkosana Delopi is the Deputy General Secretary of the South African Democratic Teachers Union. Nkosana, good morning and thank you for agreeing to speak to us at short notice this morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners.
When you see a teacher, maybe one of your members, being assaulted like this, how do you think situations like this are developing in our schools?
Look, we remain concerned about this, and we're seeing it spreading throughout the country to a point that on a few occasions that we have addressed our members in the recent past, we have had them getting very, very scared to get to schools because they are expecting or anything to happen. Or especially with the kind of laws that we're having in the country that seem to be protecting the learners more than our teachers. That makes it even more difficult for them to be able to manage these situations at school. So as a union, we remain very, very concerned about this situation.
So you say teachers, do they have enough power to discipline learners? Are they able to act against, children who consistently break the rules and maybe threaten violence, which probably happened in this case before the actual assault?
It's difficult even for them to manage them. Like the previous speaker also said, some of these things just happen, without you expecting them to happen. And at times you even get surprised that the learner who might be doing that is not one of the ones, the so-called victims or culprits that you're expecting to say that, Stephen is this kind of boy. I will be expecting this kind of conduct from him. He is the kind of boy that I expect maybe could be violent against me. At times it happens randomly. It could be a learner that you never really expected who would be behaving like that. So, yeah, it's a very, very difficult situation to manage. But we hope as a society we shouldn't give up. We should find ways to look at how we do or deal with questions of violence at our schools.
in what ways do you think teachers could be more empowered to deal with difficult situations like this? I mean, does it need to be made easier to expel a learner, for example? I mean, that creates problems of its own. Are there particular ways that you think teachers could be more empowered?
The difficult thing about it, Stephen, is that because they are like random, you don't know exactly. There's no silver bullet to respond to all these situations. That's why I think we always emphasize as a union that if the parents get more involved in the governance of the school, in the management of how children behave on a day-to-day kind of basis, in instances where you have parents closely involved in what is happening in schools, we do have minimal kind of challenges like this. But where you have a big gap between the parents and the school, you then have more of these kind of situations of violence, because it becomes the school governing body at times that assists the management of the school in the implementation of the code of conduct of the school, and then appropriate action is taken against a learner at an appropriate time. But the question of expelling a learner should be really something of a last resort, because like you said, you don't want to create another social problem for this learner, because you might resolve the problem at the school and then you transport it back to society. Because in any way, in our view as a union, is that this violence that we have at our schools comes from our society. We are having a very sick society, maybe an angry society. It could be a question of the socio-economic conditions that we find ourselves in, where even parents would have lost their position of authority, because, I mean, if you don't provide, if you can't give as a parent, many a times children just start to disregard you, and that's where it starts. So it's a big, big discussion than just reducing it to violence in the classroom. So we need to I heard people saying that we need a dialogue for our economic situation in the country. I think when we do introduce that dialogue question, the issue of moral regeneration, the value system of society will also have to come in there than just addressing our big socio-economic problems without disregarding, which I think is key, which is the values of our society, the attitude of our learners, and the moral regeneration of society. I think that becomes very, very important for South Africa. We are just losing it big time.
Thank you very much indeed. And Nkosana Delopi, Deputy General Secretary of the South African Democratic Teachers Union, thank you for joining us at very short notice. In a moment, Nkosana Takgedi is the Acting Director for School Governance and Management in the Department of Basic Education on the issue of school discipline. Good morning. It's 12 minutes now to 9.
Hear that? That's the sound of deliciousness in your kitchen after watching Ready Steady Cook. You don't season the same no more. The way you chop, slay. You do it with so much flair, because you've channeled your Salt Bay. Uyashisa. Turn up the heat. Off the bone with the meat. You're in your kitchen prime. Always dishing on time. Need I serve more? Catch Ready Steady Cook weekdays at 7 p.m. on S3 and channel your inner 5-star chef. Channel a better you with S3.
The Democratic Alliance is on a mission to rescue South Africa. Together with the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa, we have a real chance to bring in a new government that works. We can turn things around, but we cannot do it without you. In this election, the stakes are simply too high. Every single vote is going to count. A strong DA can rescue South Africa. Join the rescue mission on the 29th of May. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
Am I left or right-brained? I'm leaning right. Right? However, I do have some left-brain tendencies. Perhaps I'm left-brained with right-brain tendencies. Am I overthinking this? I don't want to be caught underthinking it. Or maybe I'm overthinking about underthinking the overthinking. Which am I?
At RMB, the simple answer is both. When you need a thoughtful solution for financial complexity that doesn't make you choose, there are only 3 letters you need to know. RMB, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Location, London. Unit, the London Serious Crime Unit. The steering, Luther. A dedicated policeman, an inspired maker of connections, and a whirlwind genius. Dazzling, obsessive, and sometimes dangerous in the violence of his fixations. The Challenge. Every episode will see Luther facing a succession of psychological duels between a hunter and the hunted, a predator and the prey. Tune in to Luther, Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 1st of May. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow getting into N3 Galuli's interchange east of Joburg. It's a crash on the N3 North around Linksfield Road. So the N3 is backed from Bedford View. The N12 and R24 routes in from the east side are heavily delayed. Trying to get into that N3 North at Galuli's. The side roads, particularly if you're coming in from Ekurhuleni, are open and flowing. You might want to avoid the highway delays and get onto some local alternatives. N1 North through Malabongwe up towards Four Ways being held by a crash in. It's just north of Malabongwe Drive. And the M1 South from Old Joburg Road through to Olifantsfontein Road still slow. The R21 both ways jamming quite heavily through the roadworks just north of Clayville. Durban bound coming in off Monsum Toti, an earlier crash at Prospect and still causing a delay, pushing traffic back towards the Tweeny Hill area. The N2 stays solid between Inanda Road and Spaghetti Junction. That'll probably stay busy all day. You've got a heavy traffic now and you sort of get into this off-peak period until about 4 o'clock where it continues just to stay busy. Cape Town's big queue on Milnerton's Marine Drive. No lights at Milner Road this morning. Traffic still back around the high school. The Kuberg Road through Joe Slevo Park and coming through Brooklyn towards Kuberg Interchange, taking bigger volumes. A lot of traffic avoiding the snarl up on Marine Drive and just instead clogging the alternative. The N1 out of Cape Town, a crash at Eustonburg before the Eustonburg exit. Big delays from Okavango Road. So Brackenfell out through Kraaifontein is heavy. And just if you're driving Eastern Cape today, the N2 will be closed for blasting between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. A 2-hour closure, full closure between Makanda and Fish River goes off at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
7 minutes to 9, continuing. Good morning. Continuing your mediated conversation this morning around discipline in schools. And Kasana Takhedi is the Acting Director for School Governance and Management at the Department of Basic Education. Kasana, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, sir, and good morning to your listeners.
You heard earlier from Dr. Khumalo that, in her view, one of the main problems was that learners have no respect for authority. And if you go back through history, older people have always said that about children. Do you think something has changed in the last sort of 20 or 30 years?
I think things have changed. The manner of discipline that adults used to direct learners into has changed. And the way learners and children view adults has also changed. The community behavior is such that part of the things that learners have grown up to is to challenge authority and question. So some of them, in challenging authority and questioning, they are not doing it in a manner that allows for discussions and dialogue. They tend to go the violent way.
When an incident like this happens, the one I described, the school it happened at in Gauteng, and you get cases like this happening now, I'm afraid to say, fairly often, what kind of action do you take? I know the provincial department has to make decisions, but what interventions normally happen?
Stephen, it's very important for us to firstly define what the school is in this context. That the school is a shared space which is mandated to develop children. So a school space has got adults and children in it. And in a shared space, there has to be rules and regulation on what needs to be done if something goes wrong and what needs to be done in order for things to go right. So in terms of the South African Schools Act, each and every school is expected to have a code of conduct for learners. The department has got a framework for developing this code of conduct. And what should happen is that when this code of conduct is drawn, parents and learners should be involved, and learners should be engaged into which things do you think are not good for you to be developed properly, which things do you think would hamper your teaching and learning that takes place in school. And that code of conduct, when it's accepted, is the one that should lead into what happens when something like this goes wrong. But in the code of conduct, we do have misconducts that are serious, and those misconducts that are serious, there is a sitting for disciplinary hearing that is conducted for such incidents that are serious misconduct, and this involves the learner, the parent, and the school governing body. The school governing body is very key in ensuring that there is discipline in the school, so the teachers can only concentrate on teaching. And in terms of this school code of conduct, the learner should then be assisted to become a better person. If the situation, like you indicated before, that confrontation, like the example that you've given in a school, is such that the learner can no longer be assisted better in that school, then we must move the learner to another school, and this movement will also have to be accompanied by counseling for that learner. But what we usually say is that such an incident does not only affect the learner that was throwing fist with the teacher, it also affects other learners who are watching. So that particular classroom will have to be assisted and taken through some kind of counseling.
Is it possible if someone, for a learner, if they assault a teacher, would you expect them to be expelled for that one single incident?
It's a very difficult one, because if you lay a hand on a teacher, that is a no-no, much as it's a no-no for a teacher to lay a hand on a child. But the incident that appeared on the video that you indicated, it is safer and better for that learner to be assisted to grow in another school. However, there might be some incidents where there was pushing and shuffling, and the disciplinary committee will have to apply its mind to actually consider the seriousness of that pushing and shuffling, and that particular learner can still be assisted in the same school. What we don't want is a situation whereby the discipline in the class can no longer be maintained because of behavior that was not corrected.
It seems, I realize social media changes everything, but Nkosana, it looks from where I sit that we're seeing more cases like this. Are there measures that you can bring in that maybe empower teachers more, maybe deal with issues like this before they start? Is there anything that you can see that can be done to stop so many incidents like this happening? We should never see assaults or acts of violence like this in schools.
Definitely, Stephen. There are ways in which we are assisting schools to minimize these acts of violence. Like the previous speakers indicated, this comes from society. So one of the first things that we are advocating for is that there should be platforms for advocacy for positive discipline. The department has got a guideline on how teachers can be assisted to employ positive discipline, although it's a new concept of discipline to most of the teachers. And also there is advocacy that there should be dialogues, public dialogues and community imbisos where the schools and communities are engaging on how to assist schools to have better levels of discipline. And as I've indicated before, learners have got to be engaged on coming up with items that should be included in the code of conduct, because that is the document around which discipline issues will be addressed. So when we are in a situation of an incident that is taking place and becomes more prevalent in a particular area, we usually work with the Provincial Department of Education to work with school governing bodies in those areas so that these issues can be attended to. But in particular, the SMT must be assisted to work together with these learners, because they are the ones that are there on a daily basis with the learners. We have come to pick up and be advised that in a school situation, when adults show care and love and concern, these elements of indiscipline from learners tend to reduce. But when learners feel less appreciated and feel that they are not being cared for, these elements tend to increase.
And Nkosana Takhedi, thank you very much indeed. Acting Director for School Governance and Management in the Department of Basic Education, bringing an end to a mediated conversation today. Nkosana Dolopi is the Deputy General Secretary at the South African Democratic Teachers Union, and starting us off today, Dr. Deliwe Khomolo from the Psychology Department at UNISA with a specialism in discipline. From Mdu, Stanza, Mpo, Melissa, myself, look after yourself. You're there, SFM, leading the conversation. Good morning, 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, latest death toll in George building collapse and suspects arrested in police officer's murder. Good morning. The death toll in the George building collapse in the Western Cape now stands at 24. Rescue and recovery efforts continue at the site. It's been a week since the multi-story building under construction imploded. 28 people are still unaccounted for, while 13 people are still in hospital. Experts are expected to address the media this morning about the process of identifying the deceased and how this is currently being fast-tracked to provide closure to family and friends. 81 people were on site when the building collapsed last Monday. In election-related news, the Umkhonto weSizwe party says the response in the country's political landscape to former President Jacob Zuma leading the party means the security threat around him is heightened. The MK party KwaZulu-Natal coordinator Simpiwe Mpungose was speaking on the sidelines of the party's rally in KwaMashu. At the weekend, Zuma was campaigning in and around Durban ahead of the May 29th general elections. Mpungose says they are leaving nothing to chance.
For someone who is a president, there is always a security threat. Whether it's Jacob Zuma or anyone, there is always a threat. But with him, with the way that he has shaken KZN, we must be, as the leaders of the organization, take all necessary precautionary measures to ensure that he is safe. Yes, there is always a threat, and we do not intend taking any risk.
The ANC eThekwini Deputy Secretary Nkosenhle Madlala says he's confident the party's vote in eThekwini is intact. Madlala made the comments at a wreath-laying ceremony for the late ANC President John Langali Balele Dube's grave yesterday, where former President Thabo Mbeki campaigned. The eThekwini Deputy Secretary General says he's confident the ANC will do well in the region despite the emergence of the newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe party.
Look, I want to focus on the message of the ANC because the ANC is the only party that has a program of liberating this country, and it has a vision where it's taking the country. There are many parties that will come around, and there are many parties that are contesting the elections. We don't have a problem with that. I don't want to talk about them. All I can say is that the vote of the ANC is intact in this region.
2 suspects are said to appear in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court today in connection with the murder of an elderly couple at a farmhouse near Glen outside Bloemfontein. The pair was arrested at the weekend at a guest house at Bloemhof in the Northwest Province. Last Saturday, a concerned neighbour called Glen police after he could not get hold of his neighbours. On arrival, police went to the farmhouse and discovered the doors were left open. Following an overnight search, the husband's body was found about 300 meters away from the farmhouse, and his 73-year-old wife's body was found in the septic tank at the farm. Police in Mpumalanga have arrested 2 men who allegedly shot dead an off-duty police officer in Delmas. The police's provincial Hawks Captain Dineo Sekotodi says the accused have also wounded another passenger who was in the vehicle. She says the injured passenger was rushed to hospital. The accused also robbed the officer of his service firearm and some cash. They are facing charges of murder, attempted murder and armed robbery. Lebanon's Foreign Minister Abdallah Abu Habib says his country fears an expansion of Israel's military campaign against the militant group Hezbollah. The Iran-backed group has said any deal to reduce tensions can only be discussed when the Gaza war ends. The BBC's Hugo Bachega reports.
The deadly violence along the Lebanon-Israel border has raised fears of another war between Israel and Hezbollah, the powerful militia and political party that is supported by Iran. Israeli officials have threatened to use military force against the group if diplomacy fails to de-escalate the situation. Here in Lebanon, the Foreign Minister Abdallah Abu Habib said he was concerned that Israel could intensify attacks on targets linked to Hezbollah, but that he didn't believe there would be a ground offensive.
Recapping the top story, the death toll in the George building collapse in the Western Cape now stands at 24. Rescue and recovery efforts continue at the site. It's been a week since the multi-story building under construction imploded. For SAFM News, I am Ann Musa.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
Catch the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday at 7 on SABC2. This week, it's all about mastering the mighty Swiss roll. To make things even more challenging, contestants must work together and present both a savoury and sweet offering of this classic bake. Who will roll on to the next round of the competition? Find out on the Tastemaster SA. Tuesday evenings at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Hey, you know what, South Africa? We're just not talking about enough.
Excuse me?
Use it liberally. Use it early. Use it with your folks.
Hey, careful, young lady.
Yes, it'll be awkward at first, but not quite as awkward as your tidy-whitey wearing father-in-law spending his golden years on your couch. Wouldn't you agree? Finances is not a dirty word. Let's start talking about it, Mzansi. Find out how at livewithconfidence.co.za. Sanlam. Sanlam Life is a licensed life insurer, financial services, and registered credit provider.
Stellies gets it that they can never catch Masandawana, but they want to secure the second position. Meanwhile, Kabuyelo loves it on the summit and want to grab 3 points to extend their lead. This is the DSTV Premiership. Witness the unmatched passion of Mzansi's beautiful game. Stellenbosch FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC on Saturday, 18 May at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Now, being intentionally unrealistic is not for the faint of heart. It's about as easy as getting my toddler to potty train herself. Improbable goals are called that for a reason. If they were easy to achieve, we would call them verified Twitter. So you can imagine the joy of the preteen inside of me who told everyone she was the next Soledad O'Brien, Arsenio Hall, or Carson Daly, getting invited to the world's #1 talk show. This goal that was so unrealistic was actually happening. But what makes me special is not my unrealistic achievements. It's the work I put in to get there. Being intentionally unrealistic is not my way with words. It's my way of life. This mindset is not dependent on the inherent privilege of your current circumstance, but rather fueled by your willingness to find creative ways to change it. And I know for sure that fortune favors the bold. So here's my 4-step blueprint towards living an intentionally unrealistic life where your dreams become your reality. First, you need to tango with the Titans. So right out of college, I interned at NBC. As a tech-savvy 20-something, I realized that everyone in the building had the same email format. You know, like firstname.lastname@mediaconglomerate.com. I think that's still the case. So I decided to tango with the Titans. And which dance partner did I set my sights on? The CEO of Universal Pictures. Bold, I know. I felt ridiculous pressing send on an email to someone of that stature. But if I really wanted to boogie with the bigwigs, I had to do it. To my surprise, he responded. And he invited me to get down with the Giants. And I spent the entire day at Universal Pictures in LA with the entire executive staff. By the end of the day, I asked him, what made you respond to my email? And he looked at me and said, the fact that you, an intern, had the nerve and audacity to call a meeting with me is so ridiculous and hilarious that I just had to. Plus, it was well written. He's still my mentor to this day. That summer of 2009, I reached out to just about every executive in the NBC building. Truthfully, most did not respond. But you can't be scared or embarrassed that people will reject you. Part of being intentionally unrealistic is identifying, then approaching the people with the power to make your dreams become a reality. Email them, rocket reach, direct message, LinkedIn, get in touch, send a kite. Gmail is free, and your local library offers free Wi-Fi and computers, so there are no excuses. And don't worry about getting a no. To me, NO simply means next opportunity.
Lindsay Granger is an American seasoned journalist and television host, kicking us off on this Monday morning. It does take quite a lot of courage, right, to do what she did, but certainly lots of lessons around just going for it that I think we can all learn from. It's 11 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to The Talking Point as we kickstart a brand new week. I'm Kathy Mutlatlana. As always, it's a pleasure for me to be in your company, and we're with you for the rest of the week until midday. So coming up on the show, I trust that you have had a good and a restful weekend. We'll kick it off with the open line. I'll be taking your calls on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, I'll be taking your voice notes on 0614 104 107. Remember, it is your opportunity to set the agenda. We're literally just 2 weeks shy of the elections. So, in 2.5 weeks, 16 days to be exact, we will be going to the polls. We will be voting on the 29th of May. I wonder if you're any closer to deciding how exactly you're going to vote, who exactly you are going to vote for, what at this point in the game is shaping your thinking, what is really pulling at your persuasion in whatever direction it might be. I'd love to hear from you about that too. Coming up in the show, we're going to continue our conversations with political parties, and today we are in conversation with the Freedom Front Plus. Dr. Peter Groenewald, president of the Freedom Front Plus, will be joining us. And yeah, it's been really great to have these conversations with the different leaders of political parties. I don't know about you, but for me, they've been insightful. It's also been revealing, right? There's a lot that you get to learn about political parties, but also the individuals that are running these parties, that are behind these parties. You get to see so much more of who they are, what they believe in, what they stand for in these interviews. So I'd love to hear your own views on how you've been receiving these interviews. I know that some of them, of course, have been more popular than others, sometimes because of what the different leaders have said, but I've found them incredibly revealing. I don't know what that means for whether it increases or decreases the electoral possibilities for these parties, but important information for you and I as the voter to have nonetheless. So Peter Groenewald will be joining us in the second hour of the show, and then we're going to wrap it up looking at the state of nursing in 2024, but we're doing it largely through the lens of the trade unions, right? And taking a look at the national health insurance, given the advanced stage that this particular legislation is in, what would the NHI bring for nurses in the country? But also what happens in the interim, right, without the NHI? How do we improve the state of the working environment for these nurses? So we'll be joined by a number of nursing organizations, including trade unions, for that final conversation that we'll have on the talking point this morning. One of the stories for me that has stood out over the weekend is, unfortunately, this devastating story that took place in Soshanguve on Friday night, where you have a family that is recovering and trying to get to grips with the loss of their son, 5-year-old Ditebogo Junior Palane. You know, we talk about crime almost every day in this country, but just the impact that crime is having on our families, on our communities. Here's this 5-year-old child. You can almost see it in your mind. A 5-year-old child running out of the house. It's late Friday. His father is driving home. He's coming home. He can hear him at the gate. He can see his car. And he runs outside to greet his father as he comes back from work. In the midst of that, out of nowhere, gunmen appear.